Okay, we can go live, almost. Welcome to the Marquette Township regular board meeting, Tuesday, March 1st at 7 p.m. And if you'll join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
All right, Clerk Rattari will take roll, please.
Trustee LaRue,
Here.
Trustee Truscott,
Here.
Trustee Pompo,
Here.
Trustee Marks,
Present.
Treasurer Johnson,
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Legal Counsel Roger Zappa, Superintendent Kirk Page. Committee members here are Dave Wiegand from Planning, Roads, and Recreation. And Mary Davis is here from the Township Advisory Committee, our representative.
Great. Thanks, Randy. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which typically consists of the approval of February 16th meeting minutes, and closed session minutes of February 16th. Received committee and other reports, including the road committee agenda for tonight, fire department officers meeting draft minutes of February 8th, fire department business meeting draft minutes of the same day, Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority minutes of February 17th, the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority agenda for the 24th, and the minutes of January 27th, Fire Chief, Fire Marshal report of January, and the Fire Department activity report from January, the Sheriff's report of January of 16, and correspondence not requiring board action, excuse me, a memo from the Fire Chief and the Fire Marshal regarding 2015 capital fund projects, Charter Communications quarterly franchise fee payment, We Energy's 2015 fly ash activity, and bills payable in the amount of $128,553.46. And last but not least, the financial statements from January and the Treasurer's report of January. If there are any board members who'd like to pull any of the items out for discussion, otherwise I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. I would like to just add, maybe under 6B, privileged comment for Under Sheriff Klein to give us a little report, answer some questions, if that's okay. I'm just going to put Under Sheriff Klein. If somebody would.
I'll make a motion, we accept the regular agenda as amended.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. So that covered two stones with one. Good, thanks for doing that. Next item will be our privilege comment. A is the resolution for Marquette Royals hockey team, and we have 5, 9, 10 of you here. Thanks. So why don't you all come up to the podium with me? This is the fun part of my job. Randy wants to get some pictures, so I don't know if you can. You get the guys? Everybody knows what I look like. recognizing the Marquette Royals hockey team. Whereas the township government provides the greatest opportunity to shape, protect, and support the character of their communities, and whereas the Marquette Charter Township Board endorses and supports development of public-private partnerships to benefit the residents and community, and whereas the members of the Marquette Royals hockey team have volunteered their time and labor, have been supporters and benefactors for township recreational improvement projects, programs, and activities, and whereas the charter of the township community has been enhanced by their collective efforts, now therefore be it resolved that the Marquette Charter Township Board of Trustees hereby express their grateful appreciation for the civic efforts of the Marquette Royals hockey team. Proclaimed this first day of March 2016. Ta-da! So who's the lucky one again? Say something? Anybody want to say?
I don't really know what to say.
What are you doing to support us? What have you been working on?
Skating?
Oh, okay. We helped build the rink at Marquette Township the last 2 years in a row. We put the boards up. This year we did last year we did the boards. Earlier this year I believe we did part of the fencing that goes around it. We also spread the wood chips at the playground around there at Lions Field.
There are a lot of community members that are glad they can enjoy it. Good. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Your penalty is to stay for the rest of the meeting. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, then you could do a paper for your government class. They'd appreciate that. Okay, well, we got all the easy stuff out of the way. Okay, that was quick. Now we have Under Sheriff Klein in the audience. You would be faster? Last fall when, yes, please. Last fall when I agreed to step into this position, the sheriff's office was one of the first calls I made to introduce myself, and because they play such a big part in our township, I wanted to make sure they knew who I was and I knew who they were. And Under Sheriff Klein was gracious enough to buy a cup of coffee, and we met with Captain Lemire, and we had a great conversation for about an hour and a half. And some of the things he said I was really impressed with, things that people don't know that the Sheriff's Department does. And I also heard him speak at the Ramada Inn when there was a tax tribunal forum put on there for information. So I asked him to come, and he normally goes to the county meetings the same night as ours, so I don't know if he had a stand-in. Oh!
As we said earlier
good.
last week when I called, that I would start that meeting at 6 o'clock, but I would be here, so.
Right, so that's why I asked to kind of stick them in the agenda tonight. I appreciate your flexibility. So, go ahead, Mike, whatever you want to contribute, or I'm hoping the guys will have some questions for you.
I hope they do. I just want to let you know a couple of things. Your new vehicle, as we speak, is prepped. It's going to be on the road soon. A 2016 Dodge Charger. Very sharp vehicle. You should be proud to have that. Wonderful car, all-wheel drive, and it should serve you well.
What color?
White. White and orange the last
Orange
time I
stripes.
checked. It stands out from everybody else because you guys well know that you pay for it. So we're gonna mark it different from our normal cars. It's very similar, but instead of brown and gold, it's more orange. Very sharp looking car. Captain Muir does a wonderful job of outfitting our cars with the latest technology, LED lights, computer systems and everything, so it is a top of the line vehicle. He does a very good job.
Great,
It's in the shop as we speak.
okay.
Couple things, I know there was some B&Es out in the township, I don't know if anybody was aware of that, and we have dealt with that. Detective Lieutenant Kangas and his staff have done a fantastic job, and those people are incarcerated as we speak also. The names. things that I talked to Captain about today, I wanted to pass on to you. We had a very nice conversation. We're glad that you have us here to help you guys in Marquette Township. As you know, it's a growing city out here, as far as I see it. You know, it's growing leaps and bounds. I mean, I hear new businesses coming in Marquette Township all the time. Mr. Gerard and I talked a lot, and we were very, my wife and I, when we're very pleased to be here the night you had your Christmas outing with the Grinch, because that was a special place for us that night. We had a great time doing that, and the kids were amazing. I tell that story often about how the Grinch and the posse and everything else. It was just a good time for everybody. So if you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But basically, I'm here just to say, one, introduce myself, who I am, my client, the undersheriff, and if there's anything else that we can do for you that we're not already doing, please let me know.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, John.
I don't have a question, I have a compliment. I think the personnel that you deliver out here to do the job that they do are great. I really like seeing the car driving through the neighborhoods, showing the flag, and indicating you're there to help us and represent the department. And I just think I've met them, and I think they're great people.
Very much, I'll let them know. I was looking over the numbers earlier, and it, 34,804 miles the sheriff's office patrolled Marquette Township last year. Just Marquette Township. Like I said, we were talking about all the miles that we have in Marquette County. We talked about that at the forum. To have 34,000 miles of road patrol just in your township tells you that we're here, we're present here, and the deputies enjoy being here. Like I said, I could go down the list. You've seen these numbers. Total traffic citations issued 171. Traffic stops almost 300 a year in Marquette Township. So they're out there doing their jobs, and I hope they do it well for you. We get some concerns from citizens, and they call, and we try to address those immediately. We had some recently, and they were taken care of that day, and it worked out real well. So if anybody has something they'd like to call us at the office, I'll give you all my business cards when I leave. Everybody here for having next to around it. If there's anything that we can do for you, if you see something that's not right, just let us know. We'll try to make it right for you.
Anything? Rooney? Pete?
I don't know if Randy talked here or not, but I think at one of our last meetings is we talked about the accidents, and people are doing dumb things and stuff like that. We don't have a traffic, we got a people problem. They're turning left when they're not supposed to. How many hours or how many miles are we concentrating on, our corridor up here? Did you talk to them
You're
about that?
talking just the 41
Oh,
corridor? Right?
yeah, the highway, turning left on Commerce and all the other things in that. I think we could slow them down a little bit.
I'd have to break it down, but I have to tell you honestly, every time we come through, I come through to work on a Friday or
Right.
Saturday. There's always somebody stopped during Marquette Township on the corridor.
Yeah.
I see it very often.
Yeah,
We were out last Saturday night, we went to the Symphony, and we came back through on Wright Street, and there was one, the deputy had a car pulled over in the barricade. So, I see it, I notice it a lot on Friday nights and Saturday nights, etc.
Just want to let the people know that we,
I'll definitely
right.
talk to the road captain and the township office deputy, and we can take care of it.
You want-
Captain Lemire and I have fairly regular conversations in that regard, with regard to the some of the issues that occur in the corridor. And as Trustee LaRue mentioned, the rank and file traveling public ignore the speed signs. They ignore the no left turn signs. They take yellow as a speed up and try and get through, as opposed to a caution to slow down to stop. So traffic enforcement is one of the things that Captain Lemire and I have been talking about here in the US 41 corridor through the township, and it's got a bad reputation for being an unsafe road. It's not an unsafe road. Trustee LaRue is absolutely correct. We have unsafe drivers. The road is designed for a higher speed level, so it's not a safety issue with the road. It's the drivers that are using the road being distracted, not paying attention to what they're doing, ignoring speed. I routinely, as I run the corridor, I strictly observe the speed limit and am an impediment to traffic. So just be aware of that. We are watching.
I'll try to do a better job of driving.
I wasn't mentioning any names. Don't get nervous, Pete.
That's just gets, I wasn't pointing anything.
I have a question. On the left-hand turns, there's usually only supposed to be one vehicle turning at a time, and not two in there,
Not
right?
two at a time, and I see that myself, but it's like, you're only supposed to do it one at a time. Okay, like I said, we'll keep an eye out for that. It's
You ma-
frustrating. You know, those Michigan lefts, as they call them, are very frustrating.
And most people don't realize they're wide to allow trucks to turn. That's the reason they're wide. It's not two lanes, it's one
You may
lane.
assume that it's meant for two cars, it's only supposed to be.
Well, and MDOT went through and put those lines in, but people don't pay any attention. They just pull right up. Then they cut in front of you when you're trying to go.
Or if you're sitting there waiting and waiting, somebody's a bit more ambitious than you, and they'll try to cut that off.
The reason I brought that up is I was going over to Red Lobster, waiting to make a turn. One turn was where I normally be. All of a sudden, another vehicle pulled in where we're not supposed to be. That wasn't too bad until I saw what was on the side. It was a sheriff's car from another county.
Ooh, ammunition.
What county was it since we're on the
It was a white one.
Most of them,
No, it was, I think it was from the south side, south end. So.
Man. Mike, do they have any money set aside for education? You know, when they start the roundabout, they come on TV at night and have a little squirt about what to do and what to do. And years ago, they used to have something on TV about how to drive and different things coming up. Is there any money to educate the people? And
I'd have to get with Office of Highway Safety Planning.
Yeah.
See if they have anything.
like a couple minutes strip on the 6 o'clock news or 11 o'clock news, or most people are watching. But there is a lot of changes in this area. I mean, I catch myself sometimes, you know, you start, oh, geez. You know, but there are a lot of people that don't follow all the rules, you know, so. And I thought more of a presence in that area in the corridor might, you know, straighten things out for a while. I don't know. Thank you.
Do you have anything with us?
No, not like I
that you
said, I know
wanna-
we had a great meeting that day, and I remember we talked earlier today, and you asked me, and I said, I hope you refresh my memory, because that was many, many meetings ago.
Mhm.
But it was a very productive meeting, and I appreciated what you said about how much you appreciated us being here.
Oh, yeah.
Township.
Yep. Yeah, y'all do a great job. Well, personally, we don't have any issues. We've always got somebody, if we call to the business. You guys are right there, you know, on your shifts, of course, so state police at night, but we've never had any issues. And even, we did have one altercation in the township last fall, I think it was. It was kind of a sad ending, but everybody was there. The guys were
Everybody was,
there.
like I said, we have a
and They
great
stood and
working
waited in the rain.
relationship with the state police and every agency in the county for that matter. Everybody
Mhm.
gets along. Everybody works very well together because, you know, we all have to work together. We all get along. We all utilize resources from each other to do a better job. So it's a treat working with everybody. There's never been a problem there ever.
Good. Anything else?
Just thank you.
Yes, thank you
Oh,
very
well,
much.
hey, thank you, and well, you, me. So, like I said, if there's anything you need, please get a hold of us, get a hold of me first.
Yeah, Randy and I talked about a few things, so imagine he'll call you.
It's like get out of jail free card. That started yesterday.
Better get that in writing, better, Pete. Well, thanks again. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Yeah, and if you want to hand out more cards, feel free,
Wow.
if they're afraid. I shouldn't have said, get you out of jail free card. Everybody will want
Said that
one.
expired yesterday.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Well, if there's anything we can do for you too, you know, to make your jobs easier or,
Like I
More
said, I
productive
look forward
or-
to delivering your brand new car. I really do.
yep, that'll be good.
That'll be soon. I really can't pinpoint a day when everything gets in the real equipment. But I'll come and
Okay,
should be ready.
Good.
for the fall.
all right.
Thanks again.
Thanks again. Okay, public comment. If anybody'd like to address the board, please feel free to come up to the podium, give us your name and address.
Good evening, I'm Jim Shelby, 14 Northwood Lane. I would like to reserve some time on item 10B, preferably maybe after. Maybe.
After Jim, sure. Anybody else wish to come up? Sure, feel free.
Good evening, I'm Mary Davis, 3 Northwoods Lane. Thank you for the opportunity to share something with you that's really dear to my heart. I'm here to ask your assistance in providing an important developmental and educational service for our children. I'm here to speak about the need for getting the 1 mil for library services on our November election ballot. I'd like to just share a few things from my perspective as a longtime elementary teacher and also as a member of Grandparents Teach Too, which is a local group that advocates for literacy for children. It's essential that we have a library to meet the needs of our children, the children of today and the children of our future. And in this age of technology, it is still essential that children have access to books. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that families read to their children from birth on, with no age as being too old to read to your children. This prestigious group recognizes that an important part of brain development occurs during childhood, and that reading aloud to children enhances their vocabulary and their communication skills. Children who are read to have heard significantly more words than children who are not read to. And this gap begins as early as 18 months, and it just gets wider. And it's really critical that these literacy skills are there for all children to be successful in school. And of course, it's a goal that we want for all our children, success in school and in life. And where can families get books for their children? At their local library. Now, the benefits of reading aloud to children, they can't be duplicated with modern digital media. Yes, technology is going to be a part of their lives, but where will they have learned the language and skills to understand using these devices? From being read to aloud as children and having discussion and conversation during their childhood. Now, this was something that I heard of at Grandparents Teach that was really of great interest to me. Studies have been made, brain scans of children who have been read to and that there's been follow-up conversation. They light up like a Christmas tree. And these children that are not read to, and they don't have a chance to discuss things with caregivers or family members, their brain scans are dark. It's kind of like the difference between our bright stores and our dark stores in our community. So which one do we really want for our children? After many years of teaching, I can't tell you how priceless it is, that moment when a child learns to read or understands a concept. But you know, there really is a price. The price is alerting parents to what they can do to enhance their children's learning and success in life. And the price includes funding our libraries to keep them operating and those doors open every day. So I'd like to ask you to join me in making this valuable resource, our library, available to all of our children. And I urge you to place that 1 mil on the November ballot, not just for me, not for the people here that are supporters of the library, but for all our families and all our children and the children of our future. And in fact, I'd like to go even one step farther. I'd like to have a link on the township website to Peter White Library and let everyone know that Marquette Township believes in literacy and in children, and we want to offer our children and our families the very best services possible, including full-time library services. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else wish to come up and give 2 seconds, 3 minutes? No? Okay. Board member comment. Pete, I see your pen up.
Ready? Just want to make a couple comments on the 3-on-3 hockey tournament that was held this weekend. There was a lot of work done by Todd Nordyke with the 101.3 radio station, Brian from Synergy, and also Randy, our manager. They did a lot of work in trying to get this thing coordinated. We had 8 teams. One backed out because they prefer not to do the boot hockey, because boot hockey is a little bit harder than skating, as I found out. We just watch them. I didn't play it. I didn't want to break the ice there. They had 16 players there. I think they had a great time. We had, from the township efforts, there was sandwiches provided by Jimmy John's and Sunny 101.9. They had some kind of agreement, so we had free sandwiches for them. We had thank God, we had our vending machines there. They have water, Gatorade, so to speak, and some pop, 38 different kinds of snacks, and for people to sit down, and they had a good time. But I think the best thing is when the people brought their kids in, they sat in a warming shack, and they said, boy, is this ever nice. So that warming shack is going to be available to everyone with availability to vending machines and stuff like that all summer. As long as it's open, that'll be open for them. It's a nice building, it's warm, it's clean, and it's just, there's picnic tables in the center. We're going to get benches coming in there, but take the time to come over and take a look at it. It's very nice, done well, and I think it's a great asset to the community. And the hockey players, I think they had a good time. But I was a little surprised talking to Randy earlier about some of them, as we get up in age, you get out there, run around on your boot hockey, and it's just, the one guy was really tired, I'll tell you. I don't think I could have done it, so. But they had a good time, so I wanted to thank everyone involved in that, and looking forward to the next event, will be the car show. Thank you.
How old were the kids, Pete?
Pardon me?
How old were the children?
Well, they were children.
Okay.
They're adults.
Okay.
And they're.
Interestingly enough, we had no juvenile teams registered this year. They were all adult teams.
So
It would have been a lot
these
easier for the juveniles.
college age kids or?
College age up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What really
To,
saved the day was Randy went and got some of these cleats for the bottom of their shoes, so no one would get hurt on it, and so that really helped a lot. So there were 8 of them. I think 8 sets you had. So that helped a lot. The people there, they had a great time. They had sandwiches. I had coffee there, and they had some cookies, and so. But everyone did a good job by working together on that thing. So the weather wasn't perfect for us. It would have been a lot easier if they could skate it versus the boot, because the boot is a little more labor intensified. So
By noon, it was getting pretty wet.
yeah, it started. We had to use the south end of the rink because the other was sort of floating because it melted. So they stayed off of that side, so they only used the south half. But it went over great, I'll tell you. You just have to stop and take a look at that warming shack and how nice it is. I think this summer people are going to do their walking and stuff like that. The vending machines will be there. It's be someplace to take a break, take their kids there, and bathrooms, and so I'm kind of excited to see that. So, and the people really appreciated, the ones who were there. They said how nice it was. So that's it.
Thanks. Like in the middle of January then?
I think
instead?
that's what we're talking
Last week in
about.
January,
Would
first
have
week
expected.
February, in that range.
40 degrees tomorrow, I think I heard. Okay. Di, do you have anything to share? Randy?
Yeah, I got a couple things. This Saturday, from noon to 2, the township office will be open for any absentee ballots that come in, or you can take them out. Next Tuesday, a week from tonight, is the presidential primary. Polls will be open at 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Anyone with any absent ballots, they have to be in by 8 p.m. that night. If not, they go in the garbage. So, and April 19th is the deadline for anyone running for the township board or any other county office for getting on the August primary. You have to. We have packets available in the office here. All you got to do is come and get a packet. It's pretty self-explanatory what to do, and we go out further into July. July 21st is the date for anyone that would like to run for the township board that does not have a party affiliation. And they would go right to the November election. So those are a few dates that are coming up quick, and that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Ernie, did you have anything?
A couple items. Today being March 1st, we have to turn over all our tax information over to the county as of today. So anyone that has not paid your taxes, you now have to go to the county, and now it's going to cost you some dollars in that too, with both the penalty and the interest in that. So we're always going to have a few people walking in the door want to pay taxes, and they get a little upset when you tell them they have to go down to the county. But we cannot accept them under state statute at this point in time. I think the other item is that when the undersheriff was here, is talking about the new vehicle that we get. Once we get that new vehicle, the current vehicle will be stripped down and used as a township vehicle, and the current vehicle that we have will be sold. So we're just rotating them all through, so we have something worthwhile for the staff and anyone else to use here. So that will be put up for sale once we get the current one stripped down and ready to go, and the manager then will put it out for sale and see what we can get for it. And it's been maintained very well.
I think Randy said last year or 2 years ago, the first trip somebody had to take paid for that vehicle because we didn't have to pay mileage or.
We use it primarily for distance travel rather than paying mileage to personal use, and for 2015 it saved us about $15,000 in travel expenses.
We're recycling. John, anything?
Yes.
Okay, Dan?
Just one thing. I did notice in the paper letter to the editor the other day, and I was a little confused because the person wrote down that 6 of the 7 board members are due up for election or re-election in 2016. And I didn't quite understand where that came from until I actually just looked at the website, our website under board members. It shows that John Mark's term is up 12 of 17. So that's on there. And also that's an old picture. I'm just wondering when we're going to get around to putting a new picture of the seated board on the website.
It's fine.
I wondered too about why we had 6 of us renewing. I wasn't sure.
Wasn't aware of that. Check the
Things
website.
were wrong.
It's through 16. All of you are up for election at the same time.
Okay, that's it? I just had a couple things to share. Under Sheriff Klein was here. I did sign the contract a couple weeks ago with Look Realty to list the properties, so that's already in the works, but it has been 2 weeks since we've met. I also attended with Pete the County Township Association meeting. Typically, I was not able to make that one because I had a planning commission that night on Wednesday night. So that was very informative. There were half a dozen county employees there. They brought literature. They each got up and spoke about brownfields and taxes and, gosh, I think I've got the packet. There was just bunches of stuff.
Blighted property.
Yeah, blighted properties, which we really don't have, they said, in the township. Let's see if there's anything else fun I can share. The, what do you call it, dispatch, 911 dispatch is up in the state police building, and they had been looking for another site, and they were going to go out to the air base, but I guess they changed their mind. They're going to stay where they are for right now, but still looking for a little bit more room. We mentioned about the road commission meeting on the 3rd, so I'm going to attend that one because that's part of our agenda for tonight too, some of that information. The equalization director, she talked about taxes quite a bit, mentioned like Ernie did, that they're going to have to go to the county and pay now. They you can, if you want to see a sample ballot, I thought this was good. Now, they have michigan.gov/vote. Michigan.gov/vote. You can go in at any time and see a sample ballot for whatever the election is. I thought that was pretty good information. And they talked about all the buildings that they've been able to help save or raise, one or the other. It was really good. I enjoyed. I was glad I was able to go to that again, because I'd only been to one before that. Let's see. I also had a meeting with a few of us about the latest, tribunal filings that we've got a couple more on the books now. So that's not a happy thing, but we'll be working on them. I believe we talked to some of the folks. I left a message. I haven't heard back, to see if we can have them come in and bring in their as-built and see where we might have a difference in the evaluation or the assessment or the equalization. So we'll hopefully do that and save them some money and save us some money. We'll see how that goes. And I did have secondhand, I had a gentleman tell me that another fella called him and told him that he had called 911 for a chimney fire, and he wanted to compliment our fire department. I don't know exactly who showed up, but he said they were professional, they were quick, they were knowledgeable, they knew exactly what to do to get out, tell him what to do. Nobody was hurt. And the gentleman said, well, why don't you write to the township or call somebody or let a board member know? So I don't know if any of you here share that with us if you do, but hopefully they will, write a letter or something. But I wanted to let everybody know that he was just thrilled with the response. Quick, they took care of it, and I thought I just needed to share that. We also attended, the three of us, the officers, attended the library subcommittee last meeting, and we will talk about that when the agenda item comes up. But I thought it was a great meeting. I thought it was extremely informative on both sides, and I think we'll see when we talk about it. We'll see how that goes. But I was really glad we went. It was a good meeting. Let's see, forum discussion, we really don't have any unless somebody wants to talk about anything. I had kind of thrown that out. Dan?
Well, I'd just like to, in going over the packet when we got them, and obviously I'm just a little disappointed that I'm looking at the manager's report and I see a section here concerning the fire rescue apparatus aerial, concerning the need for a new one, concerning the possibility of going with a 0.25 millage, that it would fall under the manager's report rather than an agenda item, because as far as I know, if it's the manager's report, discussions and actions can't be taken on it. So I would think if we're talking about an actual millage, that should definitely would have been under an agenda item, as well as the fact that I think Manager Gerard was requesting this be for the May school board election, which is past the due date for February 9th. I asked Clerk Rattari when the due date for a proposal could be presented for the May election, and he said it was February 9th. So obviously we're past that. There's no way that can be done. And the April 26th one would be in August. So I would like to see this been as a agenda item that is available for discussion.
Randy, do you want to answer?
Sure. That's exactly what it's asking the board to do, is to consider it. It's all it is a request from the manager and the fire chief for the board to consider the possibility of a millage. That's why it's in the manager's report. I'd be thrilled if you put it on as an agenda item.
So we'll talk about it. We can ask questions during his report, and then if we decide we want to talk about it, is that a good time? Okay,
If he wants to talk about it now, let's do it.
that's fine too. That's why I wanted to use this forum discussion for.
Well, I guess I'm a little hard pressed to understand. I understand that the aerial is a 1994 vehicle. I was on the department when we purchased that vehicle, and in fact, I think we went out for a millage for that vehicle. It was a 55-foot aerial telesquirt, which means we could pump water and through the nozzle at the top of the aerial. it's not used much. I really couldn't tell you how many times it's actually been out on a call. But this vehicle has never failed the MDOT annual inspection. It's never failed the annual pump test. It's never failed the annual ladder test that it has to go through. I don't really, other than I think we had that I can remember, a leak at the nozzle section of the aerial that we've actually had major repairs done to it. The vehicle itself has only 15,622 miles on it, and the pump hours on this vehicle is only 424 hours. You have to realize those miles and those pump hours are also used for the training aspect of this truck. So it's a 22-year-old truck with just minimal amount of time and hours on the vehicle. I think the idea of going out for a millage or even going out for a replacement of this vehicle is not in the interest of this township, as we have to realize that we are a mutual aid community with Marquette City, as well as Negaunee City, as well as Negaunee Township, as well as Chocolate, as well as Scandia. Marquette City has a 75-foot aerial. Negaunee City has an aerial. There's 3 aerials in the county. I just don't see spending $1 million for a vehicle. It's just, my feeling is I don't think it's a feasible idea. To actually go out for a .25 mil for this vehicle, I think it would be not fiscally sound or right. So the whole idea of intergovernmental action is working with other communities in the area, and that's no more shown than with the fire departments. When you have mutual aids, we respond and help Scandia, we respond and help the city if they need it, Negaunee, and vice versa. So again, spending $1 million for a vehicle that we already have 2 in the area, and ours really isn't that in bad need of repair. I mean, it's even said that we don't have any problem with it right now, and because it's 22 years old down the road, we're going to have problems with it. Well, you can have problems with a vehicle that is 1 year old. So I just think $1 million right now with a .25 mils is no, I would never agree to that.
Why don't we back up a little bit? I didn't know you were going to go into I was going to ask Randy to preface with his explanation of why he suggested that. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure, no problem at all. As board members know, the fire department no longer has the ability to build up a fund balance. We discovered that in the last budget process last year, and as a result, there is no ability for the fire department to plan for future equipment needs. What this request does is, not ask you to consider potential millage for an aerial. It asks you to consider potential millage for apparatus replacement. The aerial right now is fully certified, fully licensed, in good operating condition, as I say in my request. However, it is old, and legislation was changed to allow it to continue to be inspected and licensed. There may come a time where that legislation is no longer in place, and it will no longer meet the requirements for licensing. So what I'm asking simply is for the board to follow up on its own discussion in the last 2 budget cycles to establish a mechanism for the fire department to set money aside to replace an apparatus if they need one. You all know we have more than one apparatus that needs work. We do have one that's a problem piece of equipment. It's functional, but it's costing us a lot of money in repairs. That one may need to be replaced first. That's all I'm asking you to do, is to consider the potential of putting a millage out specifically targeted to build up a fund for apparatus replacement in the future. That's all. If you wish to, that's fine. If you choose not to, that's fine. I've done my budgetary responsibility.
So if you remember, as Randy said, with some of the misconception with millage versus assessment, we were under the impression that we were not allowed to bankroll or set money aside for anything that didn't meet that current year's budget, which kind of took the capital improvement type item out of the ballywig. And when you're talking about $1 million equipment, we can't afford not to have something. So, and I don't remember, and I did bring my budget, but we have a certain amount of money budgeted every year for equipment. And what we have found out in the meantime is that we are allowed to have a capital fund chart of accounts number in the budget now. And we can start building that up. Now, I haven't talked to Ron directly, just kind of emails and stuff back and forth since this kind of came up. But if something were to happen to one or two of the machines in the next couple of years, now we don't have that money set aside because we had to spend down what we had reserved for it. So it was his and Randy's suggestion that maybe we'd look at having a millage to help us build that fund back up. And that's kind of where this came from. It's not like we're going to go out and buy a truck tomorrow, but we know that the Seagraves is giving us some troubles. We know it's costing us, like Randy said, it's costing us to run it. So that was the impetus for bringing up this discussion. John?
Having gone through the budget and having gone through knowing that we're on the cusp of needing funds that we haven't had, we won't have. We have had in the past, but will not have in the future. The revelation that we've got some more dark stores coming along even emphasizes the fact that we're going to have less money to work with. And that's why we needed to work on getting capital improvement projects going so that we would be able to fund for the future things that we saw coming down the road. And I think that this proposal that has been made and recommended by the manager and the fire chief is wisdom on their part, telling us that we don't need $1 million tomorrow from the public for this thing. What they're asking for is to start to put ahead money that when that $1 million bill comes along, we won't have to run out and ask for a millage on that. And we won't have to ask it for a few other things that we know that are essential, that we just don't have the money for, haven't had it in the past, and we sure as heck aren't going to have it in the future. So I think this is a wise proposal. I hope that we get more of them because I think there are some essential things like a generator for this building. But I think the way to satisfy this is to take it head on. I think the action will generate $60,000 or just under that a year. It's going to take a long time to build up enough to have a cushion if we need to replace that equipment. And I think that the proposed millage is one essential achievement that we could make. It would demonstrate to the public that there are things that we're going to have to do like this because we don't have that extra money that we used to have. And so I move to concur with the recommendation of the Township Fire Chief, DeMarsh, and Township Manager Gerard, and request that a targeted millage request proposal specifically for fire rescue aerial apparatus replacement at $0.25 be prepared for placement on the election ballot. I think we need to look at this as something that's essential, something that we need to address, and let's get it moving now. It isn't going to happen. It's going to take a long time to get to the amount of money you would need for replacement of equipment. And we may probably will be looking at having a cushion, not the total amount. We're still gonna have to, if you need that equipment, let's say it goes in a ditch tomorrow, and you bend the frame on one of these things, that's it. You can't depend on everybody else to come fill that void. What we need to do is start thinking as a board, ways to prepare for these needed essentials. So I move that.
Okay, without bursting your bubble,
Is there support?
Can't.
no, because we're in
It's only
forum discussion. So that's the reason I brought this up, just so that we could kind of talk about it and put it on a future agenda. But I figured since, the discussion kind of started, we would be able to collect a little information now. So if we can save that, we can't do anything in the forum discussion, but ask and answer questions, at least for right now. Pete?
I think this is something that we've been working on for budgets. We say we have to put so much away for each one. I think Danny was one of the ones that said, I want to know how much we have in each year building up, and this is how we do it. We have to build up each year, because you're not going to come out and say, well, okay, I'm going to take $1 million out of it and buy a truck. Not only this truck, could be anything. We are the backup, and we have to plan for helping other areas. Marquette, we're the backup for them. They're the backup for us. We've got a Myers store coming up. We can't afford not to have the equipment to take care of them. And the aerial trucks are something important, is not just to get up on a building, but you can't put fire people on top of a building when it's burning, because the structure won't hold it. So they have to have aerial things, ladders like that, or you have to have any vehicle that. And by budgeting a little bit every year is going to help. It's not going to take the sting out of it when we need the thing, or anything compared to that. But for the fire department, it's going to make it a little easier, because we can't build up a balanced fund. Because years ago, you add a little bit to this one, add a little bit to that one, so you can move around, but this year you can't do it anymore. So I think it's important that we work towards that way, and I think it's a good idea.
Any other questions, or Dan?
Well, since we're in a discussion stage, I guess I'll go with this one. As you know, when we were down in Detroit this past January, if you remember from my comments, I made sure that I attended sessions concerning special assessment, and I believe Supervisor Durant was also at the meeting that I stood up and asked the question of Rob Thal about this specific issue, about whether being able to hold over money in a Public Act 33. His comment was, you can't have a fund balance. You can have a fund for apparatus, knowing everyone in the township knows you're not going to pay for a truck in 1 year. So the fact that we were told we had to get rid of all this money, we basically drained that fund that was already there, which, if you include the contingency fund, was in excess of $180,000. That could have been left in that fund for replacement of vehicles. In talking with the manager from downstate, he explained to me the same thing. That is the way they do it. There is a fund, and the township's budget had a fund for apparatus replacement. And we put over $100,000 in that fund. There is no reason that the fire department can't look at their budget and decide that they can budget money into that fund. I guess I'm just a little disappointed with this whole way that this came about. The fact that we were told we couldn't, then in all honesty, we really could have. And again, I'm going to go the route of, I'm sorry, if it's when I read this thing, it appeared that it was basically talking about a 1994 Pierce aerial apparatus, and then maybe down the bottom we changed it down to regular apparatus. That's going to happen no matter what. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no way. I can't. It's up to the voter to decide if we put it, but I would not agree for a millage on this. $58,000 a year. I think that possibly the fire department, if they sharpen their pencil, they could come up with money to put in this same fund. Like I said, they did have a good amount going in there, which is now gone. So that's just my feelings.
So my thought was that this is going to be part of our CIP discussion. We're going to set a work session date tonight and have all the departments come. If you remember, we did that a couple years ago. Yeah, it wasn't last year. And just spent a couple hours working on CIP. We need to talk about what we're going to do with software or hiring or something to get this ready for the next budget, I would hope. I think we can do that. And the fire department's part of it. It isn't just about public works. So this will be discussed. Ron will be there. We can get his thoughts and what he and Randy had talked about. So this is a little premature, but it doesn't hurt to have the discussion anyway. Do you want to add something, Randy?
Yeah, this is not a recommendation. This did not come to you as a recommendation. That's why it's in the manager's report. It came to you as a suggestion to consider. I truly appreciate what Trustee Pompo was saying about discussions that occurred downstate, but he needs to remember that we're funded by a special assessment. And as a special assessment, the legal opinion, the written legal opinion from two separate attorneys that we checked with said in a special assessment it would be an illegal double tax, and you cannot have a fund balance. Now you have those written opinions that came to the board acted on them. So opinions may change, but those are written legal opinions. The issue of apparatus, and the reason I've identified it generally as apparatus is there are two pieces of equipment that could be impacted. And pumpers run between $400,000 and $600,000. Aerials run around $750,000 to $1 million. And that's what we would need to have available or access to should one of those events occur. I simply suggested in here $0.25 It doesn't need to be $0.25 It can be $0.1 All I'm saying is we need to start building up some fund that when that day comes, we don't have to go back to the voters and try and pass a millage for $1 million or $600,000. That's a duty that I have as your budget manager.
Good planning.
So we'll talk about this again. Ernie, you want to add?
Just listening to it, and I think comments on both sides of the board here. So I think during the CIP, we'll get more information and looking at the fire department's budget, and then at the same time looking at what Danny found downstate and what our attorneys have come up with, and see how it's all plays out at this point in time. And looking at the dollars that the fire department brings in, I'm sure we could pull some dollars out of there without going to the public, but I don't know until we get to the budget session and see what's all about, and we get some answers to some of these special assessment questions and that. Because right now, we don't know on that.
Yep. So, okay. Anybody else have anything they wanted to talk about?
I just like to see that, you know, you go to almost like zero-based budgeting and give them what they need and then plan for these items like this. You know, we always say we got sort of plan ahead. Now, you know, I think that's a good way. We'll know the balance every year, stuff like that. And you're not going to hit the residents for a big amount at one time. So I think it just makes good sense and good planning to do it this way. At least we know what we have instead of sort of add to this fund in the fire department or add that fund to the public works, and then we'll take it out of, you know, we're not, well, I won't say it, but it's the right thing to do.
We'll talk about it again, a little more in depth with more information.
That's what we're here for, to plan for the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts here. Unfinished business. Discussion with road committee members regarding the top 3 priorities for the road commission 3/3/16 meeting. In January, I think it was, I went to, it's called the County Road Commission Relations Committee, I think, or something.
Township Relations Committee.
Township Relations, okay, thanks. And it was just set up basically so that the townships and the road, because the road commission works for the townships. Cities have they own their own roads, so they do their own roads. So the townships have the road commission to keep their roads up, and of course, that's another whole meeting because we know they don't have any money. But anyway, there are different board members that attend that meeting from the road commission. Usually there's one there, and the manager, Jim Iwaniki. So he threw out to the group that was there a request for information from each township on what we feel is important. He said if you could narrow it down to the top 3 things that you think your township needs in relation to the road commission, bring it back to the March 3rd meeting. So typically, that request would come from us to the Planning Commission, to the Road Committee. Planning didn't have 1 or 2 meetings, I think, in the last couple months, so, you know, this board kind of directed the Road Committee on its own to answer that question. So I believe Dave had given us, Dave Wiegand, there was a memo on your place when you came in with 3 recommendations. One was road drainage, the second one is pedestrian access, and the third one was road maintenance. So Dave, if you want to come up and kind of give us a synopsis? Yes, Randy.
If I may, while Dave is taking the podium, just for the too much in road commission discussions or road discussions here with the township. What Supervisor Durant is referring to is the passage by the legislature of the new roads bill that is supposed to cure the road issues in Michigan sometime in the next 500 years. But at any event, as a result of that, the Road Commission has the potential for picking up some additional revenue that was unanticipated that would equate to approximately 10% of their budget that might be available to townships. And that's what he was referring to at that meeting. And as a result of that, he asked the townships basically to identify if that money becomes available and if they have that money to allocate to township projects, what would the priorities be in each of the townships? And that's what the board then turned over to the Roads Committee to take a look at and come back to the board within their opinion what those 3 would be.
Thank you. Dave?
First, I apologize that it wasn't in your packet. We just get it out of the Road Committee at 6:30 tonight to present it to the board. And rather than read this whole thing, with the board, I would just summarize our comments and suggestions. The first one was road drainage, and as you're aware with the road millage project, there's a number of issues that came up with drainage that needed to be addressed. The Road Commission assisted in some of those on a limited basis, obviously because of their funding. And as part of the road millage, we took care of the more immediate road drainage issues to help protect the roads that we were repairing. There are going to be more road drainage issues that come up, and there's more out there that need to be addressed. And on the off chance that the Road Commission is going to come up with additional funding, it would be nice if they could put that on their priority list to go out and address some of those issues. The Road Committee would be more than happy to list actual areas where there are problems, where they need to be fixed, where there's erosion problems. And as you're all aware from this whole thing we went through over the last couple of years with the road millage, is the biggest problem you've got on the roads is the water that sits on the roads and doesn't get off, or the water that washes sand on the road and it all sits there and doesn't get off. That's the biggest problem with the road surfaces we have. That's what causes all the damage. So if we fix those drainage problems, we can save the money we're spending on the millage and actually get something, get a little more for our dollar on the road repair. The second item we put up for the board's consideration is pedestrian access. And it wasn't until we got looking at this that I decided we had to break it down into at least 4 different areas, because there's pedestrian access pretty much breaks down into safety strips, much like we have on Warner Street. And so far we have them from, I think it's Lost Creek down to Commerce along 492, and we have it across Warner Street. In this year, we're going to be finishing the Safe Routes to School, which is going to bring pedestrian access from North Star Academy all the way over to Warner Street and tie into that safety strip. And this year, I believe the county is going to start the reconstruction of Ontario, which is going to take a couple years to get done. Part of that reconstruction is supposed to be pedestrian access ways. The biggest piece that's missing out of all that is about a 500-foot stretch from US 41 along Commerce up to Warner Street. And if that one little piece of the puzzle was finished, we would have successfully connected Lost Creek, North Star Academy, and Wright Street all together in one network for short of that just 400 or 500-foot section of safety strip that we need along there. We're working on getting that done this year. Don't know how well that's going to be. Obviously, funding's an issue. But that would be something that would be nice to see the county step up and assist us on, if they have these extra funds. The other ones kind of on the wish list was South Vandenboom Road. We're in the middle of reconstructing that this coming year. It would be interesting, I guess, for lack of a better word, if we put a pedestrian access from the Iron Ore Heritage Trail up to Grove Street, and that would connect to the Nakamoon South Marquette Trails Network. And that would tie the Iron Ore Heritage Trail to that trail network. And then the next one on the list was Grove Street. As you're all aware that perennially we have erosion problems along Grove Street and washouts and dangerous situation for both cars that leave the paved highway onto the shoulder, and we spend a lot of money, or at least the county spends a lot of money making those repairs. If we put some kind of a safety strip along that to address those erosion issues, we could successfully connect South Vandenboom back over to 492, which now makes that a loop. Up the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, this Grove Street on South Vandenboom, across South Vandenboom to 492 and back down to the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, which then connects all the way into Wright Street if you follow the safety strips. We got looking at this, and we're actually quite proud of this. We've actually come a long ways in a couple of years. 2 years ago, we had Werner Street. Or 3 years ago, we had Werner Street, and now we almost have what you could call a network, which is kind of interesting. The last recommendation under pedestrian access was consideration of the reconstruction they're slated to do in 2019 and again in 2021 on the US 41 business corridor. And the suggestion there was to get some, as opposed to the safety strips, is to get traffic segregated pedestrian access on both sides of the road. And if you put that together with some directed crossing of US 41 for pedestrians, how much that would enhance the safety along that corridor. And that together with some lighting in the corridor. It would make our downtown area actually a downtown area. And you would, I would think it would be a big improvement to that area, because we've just had, what, a year or 2 years, a year ago, we just had a fatality out there. It would be nice, that would take care of those problems. Together with that, they're talking about a couple underpasses underneath the US 41, all which the DDA and the subcommittee is working on. We're just starting our work on that. So those are all things we'd like to throw out there for the county to put their additional funds towards. And if nothing else, a big portion of that is 15 or 20% of any one of those projects is engineering. It would be nice to see somebody step to the plate with their extra funding just on the engineering of those projects. The last thing on our wish list is road maintenance. We're spending $1.5 million of the residents' money to bring these roads up to where they should have been a long time ago. There used to be a working relationship, mostly because there used to be extra funds between the township and the road commission to address maintenance issues on an annual basis. That's kind of fallen by the wayside since the funds dried up. We would like to see the township put together an asset management program specifically for the roads. And we would like to see the road commission update those PASER ratings, especially when we get these roads done over the next 2 years, and then start working a little closer with the township on some directed local roads maintenance that we need. And I emphasize local roads because all too often that repair and maintenance goes towards state highways, US 41, county trunk lines. We're suggesting that we need to use an asset management program to direct needed maintenance to the local roads, the roads we just spent $1.5 million repairing. And that was our three suggestions.
This is good, Dave, thanks. I mean, even if those funds aren't available for them right now, this gives them an idea what our concerns are going forward. They have funds for the township. They have to spread them out with sand and snow and everything else, the maintenance and repair. but at least they'll have an idea where we're coming from, what's important to us.
It would be, I'm sure we're gonna bug the board here a little while down the road about developing an asset management program. I know the county already has an asset management program, but it's not a give and take. It's more of a, this is what we have, this is what they say needs to be replaced, but we don't have any money, so forget it. We need to get a little tighter on our asset management program for our local roads to make sure that the work we've done over the last year and over the next 2 years does not get left by the wayside, and 5 years from now we're looking for more money. We need to stretch these roads out for 20 years, and I think the only way to do that successfully is with that asset management program, and then have the county agree to a little more input from the township on what roads needs repairs and what year and what type of repair they need.
Well, part of the proposal that came from the road committee when we went for the millage was to have the repair and maintenance upkeep for the span of the term, 15 or 20 years. 15, yeah. So it's funny because that was on one of the things on my list I was gonna call you about and say, where do you see this going? So it sounds like that's another meeting or a work session, maybe part of CIP again too, to figure out.
Yeah, it's almost like the road should have a CIP program involved in that, because there's certainly going to be some maintenance, and it's really a shame that, I mean, it's difficult to discuss because we don't know the roads and we keep having that feed into us, but we do drive on them every day and we are paying to have them fixed. We ought to have some input on what repairs are done and the timeliness of those repairs. And the only way you can keep track of that is if you have a functioning asset management program and the other entity that works with us on those roads is willing to sit down and talk to us about it so that we can all move in the same direction.
Anybody have any questions for Dave? Randy?
Not a question for Dave, but just a clarification. You're absolutely right. The millage that we passed, the 1.5 mils for 15 years, does have a maintenance aspect to it, but that's maintenance of the road surface. I think what Dave is talking about is there's more to the road than just the road surface. We've got many, many areas where culverts should have been installed that weren't installed, driveways that were permitted without installation of a culvert, so the water's pooling as opposed to moving. And that's the kind of additional asset management for the road sides and for the drainage that need to be addressed that our millage doesn't address, and that's what we would have to work with the county on. So yes, we do have built into the 15-year millage for the road surface, maintenance of that surface and repair of that surface to keep the road surface in good condition for at least 15 years, possibly 20. But what we're talking about now is asset management for the entire right-of-way. In essence, I guess that's the easiest way to phrase it, is within the right-of-way of the roads, which is the road sides. And that's the issue that we have on many of the roads. As you drive around on many of our existing roads that have not yet been repaired, you see the edges of the roads crumbled. That's because the drainage that isn't getting away from the road is washing the underpinnings out of the road and it's caving in. That's what we need to avoid going forward.
Yes, Pete?
What Dave's trying to say is that we really have to have some more input because we're paying the cost. We have to put a little more pressure on the county road commission to sit down with us and after we develop this plan and say, here's what we would like to get done. Because they're not paying for it, we are. It's their roads. So we have to have more commitment from them to fix it, and drainage is the biggest thing because as we went through these roads, road by road, if we would have had better drainage, we wouldn't have had some of the problems, not to the extent that we had. So we would want them to step up a little bit, and then, you know, with this program, they should come down to help us.
Sorry, I'm just making a note for,
You know, if I could add, and it always comes down to money, and I think the residents have stepped up with their 1.5 mils and are doing a lot of work with these roads. Unfortunately, there's so much more that could be done, but you can only spend so much of your income towards keeping your roads up when you're being told that they're not your roads. But there's some other areas like the South Vandermoon, if we don't get a safety strip down there for pedestrian access, well, all that construction's going on over there, it would be a nominal fee to put that safety strip along there. It'd be a shame not to do it this year. So, and I know there's no money for it, but it would be nice to work with the county, see if we can have them step up and take some of that burden on themselves and see if we can get something done with that. Because it's a big deal. It's part of the pedestrian access. We have a complete streets ordinance. This is all part of it.
Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, it's a nice proposal. I like it. My big concern is the fact that Ontario Avenue was supposed to have been finished this year. This was supposed to be the second phase, and it got postponed from last year. My major concern is the fact that the safety strips need to be on Ontario. As far as I'm concerned, I think those are the first before we go into anything else. Now, if the road commission somehow doesn't have the money again this year to move on to Ontario, I think that if this extra cash is here, then I think we just need to start. I would like to see Ontario get done as soon as possible, because it seems to keep getting put off, and to me, that's one of our major safety areas. There's a lot of pedestrians that go north-south on Ontario, obviously, as a street that is being used. So I would like that just put back in a hopper for thoughts too, just in case, again, if the county falls through again on repairing Ontario, that I think that's one of the ones that we need to look at also.
And I think when they start Ontario, and Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's about a 3-year project. And if they actually start it in 2016, then it'll be 2018 before that's done.
Yeah,
but I understood that the safety strip was part of that project, correct?
It is. It's a federally funded project, and the feds did not release the funds last year. That's the reason the Road Commission didn't move forward with it. That's under the federal small urban funding. They do anticipate, again, if the feds release the funds this year, they're ready to do the project, and it does include a safety strip on one side. But it's about a 3-year project.
It only goes to Allen.
Goes from Ontario to Allen, and then the second year from Allen about halfway down, and then the third year the final connection to Wright.
Summit, and then
Right.
goes the rest of the way to Wright Street. But when that's done and that safety strip is in all the way, you'll be able to come off Warner Street. You'll be able to come from Lost Creek, and go all the way down to Wright Street and get on that walking bike path down there.
Well, that's true. But again, just in case, obviously, federal funding sometimes we all know disappears quickly, and I think that Ontario needs to be thought of. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that is one of the ones I think that would be an important thing to look at for our road repair.
I just wanted to, here, the Ontario project, it's a 1-year project. The contract has been awarded. It's road, pedestrian pathway, and storm drains. And it's a 3-year funding cycle. So the project was not delayed. You know, it's just a matter of, it's a 3-year cycle.
It was supposed to start last year. Correct?
No, they just
Well,
released funding last
that
year.
was my understanding. In fact, my understanding was that they didn't start last year.
What I'm trying to tell you is the whole thing is phase 1, okay? It's a 3-year process. The contract has been awarded, it will be complete this year. Okay? No, just yeah. And so phase 2 is gonna be the next 3 years. And phase 3 will be the following 3 years. So you're only doing, and they could accelerate it, but you know, that's, right now, that's the way it is. It's a 3-year funding cycle. So it will happen this year.
What you're saying is it's a
3-year funding cycle from 16, 17, and 18, not 15, 16, and 17?
It was 15, 16, 17.
And as far as I knew, and as far as I was told, from Warner to Allen was going to be the first year, which would have been in 15.
It's gonna be the first phase, which is 15, 16, 17.
I think if I'm hearing,
So it's
I think if I'm hearing this right, I
it's a
think everybody else
a
is too. is-
9-year
is,
project.
Warner to Allen Street is going to be the first 3 years.
Correct.
And the second 3 years, which is going to be 18 to 20, is going to be Allen to Summit.
Yeah, I don't know what.
And the next 3, so it looks like 9 years to get all the way down to Wright Street, which I did not
That's correct.
understand.
You didn't hear it right.
I think at your meeting this week, you should get clarification on that, because my understanding from Jim was they were doing from the road surface, and the path would be from Ontario to Allen this last year, but the federal funding did not come through, so they didn't have the money to do it. That was the last message that I got from Jim.
It's not done anyway.
No, it's not done.
All right, I will check on that.
But it will be done, the contract is awarded, and I only know that because our water main replacement is a part of these other projects. The contract has been awarded for all that work for this year. So the funding is a 3-year process.
Okay, I will confirm that one way or the other Thursday night. Anybody else have any questions for John?
I just have a comment. I think the road committee's development of an asset management program was key to explaining to the public and gaining their support for the road millage. So I'm encouraged to know that you're going to work with developing an asset management program for the needs that we are addressing with the county. I think that's a great idea. And I think it'll help a whole lot, and it'll get something on paper that we can work with. I think it's great.
And you should keep in mind, the asset management program that we got, we downloaded it from Michigan Tech, and we got the PASER information from the county. That is probably outdated by now,
Yep.
and the whole thing has to be started over again, because we just got that so that we could differentiate what type of repairs needed to be done to what roads, so that we could initially approach the whole millage issue. That whole process, that was on my personal laptop computer, and that's sitting out there, and it's gone. I think if the township wants to put together an asset management program, I would think the road committee would be more than happy to review it quarterly or semi-annually or something, but I would think that needs to be put together and operated by staff.
I know the source of the information came from a number of places, but I don't want to miss paying tribute to the road committee that really developed it and presented it to the public. I think it's the way that you sell it. And I think it's doing it again with the county, getting it any way you can attain it will help develop it and have people understand it, both at the county and on our road committee and at the board here.
Just for the board's information, the asset management program, that information is not a charge to the county, or the township already paid for that. It's just a matter of delegating staff time to take care of it, because there's a lot of information there that has to be entered and kept up to date, and especially the PASER information. Every time that road is repaired, which we did a lot of roads last year, 22 miles, all that PASER information has to be updated and put into the computer, and if you do it on the county's time frame, that's done about every 3 years or so we need it quicker than that. I happen to know that we have a planner that is PASER rated.
He is, yes he is.
Anyway, thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Oh, man.
Those papers were too rattly. Update on Township Library Contract Subcommittee meeting, which is kind of what I mentioned before. Well, like I said, 3 of our board members met with 2 staff and 2 board members of the library board for about an hour, I think, last week. The exchange, I thought, was extremely beneficial for both sides. A lot of good input. And in the midst of that, the interim director found another contract that apparently hadn't been, it obviously wasn't signed, it hadn't been disseminated. So what we kind of chewed on in the course of the meeting, it was dated 2010, and we're thinking that what might have happened is it's based on the 1993 contract, but expanded a little bit more on how to do exactly what we've been asking for, is how to change it, how do you amend it, what do you do with it, when does it expire, how's the millage handled. It was a very comprehensive page and a half, and it said it all, which is, I think, what I thought we were kind of looking for. So we're kind of wondering if maybe what happened, and it's all speculation. We checked with the attorney to see if he had a signed copy. Nobody has kind of remembered it. Some of us were on the board back then, but it was also the time of the recall that was going on. And we're wondering if maybe somebody, whether it was the board or the library board or somebody, recommended this be done. The library attorney, we're guessing, is the person who did it, put this expanded contract together, and in the midst of all that was going on, it got forgotten. The only thing we could figure. So, I did email, I asked Bruce to give us a copy so that the board could see it ahead of time and know what we're looking at. So it's kind of board pleasure. Do you want to discuss it? Do you want to, I mean, it's not overly lengthy, we could read it. It's just a little bit more of an expanded contract on the 1993 one. It does refer to a specific millage, and as Bruce said, we want to make sure that that's not a recommendation coming from the 8 of us that met, 6 and the 2 staff members. So what does the board think? Any comments? John, is that you? Did I hear?
No, it was.
Dan?
It was, but I guess I want to ask a question. What, the 3 board members were sent to find out what could be worked out, I assume, and what my question is the unsigned contract that came out of nowhere, is that what the library is proposing that we consider?
No,
Or
no.
what just exactly, it has no meaning at all unless there's some kind of comment from the
No, there doesn't.
library. Is this what they would accept, or what have we got in front of us?
This is the first time anybody has seen this. I don't believe they've had a board meeting to talk about it.
Okay, so.
Came out of, I'm guessing, and Bruce can talk to this, he's welcome to come up to the podium. I told him he could speak and answer questions or whatever. But he's probably in the same position I am in. You know, we're new people in a position that has history. And I'm sure as he was going through the library folders and files and drawers, it came up. He showed it to us, we read it, we talked about it, and I said, I'm going to bring it back to our board. If it's something that they want to consider, we'll talk about it. If not, if you want this committee to go back and have another meeting, or if you like this, or if you don't like it, we'll throw it away and start over.
Well,
it's for consideration. There's no recommendation, it's just new information that's been discovered.
Just something you found.
Yeah.
Okay, it's something that's.
It's all up to us.
It's
my mother
something
would
that
say.
has been found, unearthed from the file, an unsigned contract, and it's been brought back, but what exactly is, it seems to me that when the contract was terminated, our willingness to work with the library was, come on back with something if you think it's worthwhile, and that you would accept and present it to us and we'll consider it. I'd like to know before we give it any further consideration, is this something that the Peter White Public Library Board is asking us to consider.
No,
If it's not, then
I'm asking you to consider it.
You probably didn't even know about it, John.
The
till
three
you
of
come
us
up with
who
it.
went, who are representing this board.
is,
That was the consensus.
so is
Bring
there
this
any
back.
recommendation from the board, from this body?
No, we just brought it back.
Just brought it back and say, here's something to look at?
Yeah,
What they found.
this is what was discovered. Bruce, why don't you preface, words in your mouth, obviously.
For those that don't know me, I'm Bruce McDonald. I'm the interim director of the Peter White Library. This contract from 2010, Pam had this, and it was drawn up by our lawyer, Ann Siernick, in 2010. And what had happened to it, I don't know when it was given to the township. I can tell you that if you look at, I don't know about your copy of the 1993 contract, but mine has a timestamp on it when it was faxed to the Library of Michigan, September 17th, 2009. And there was speculation at our meeting that it fell into the time frame when there was some changes here in the township, and that this document never really went anywhere. And it seems to address some of the concerns that the township has. It has legal authority for the different portions of it, which is something that has come up. So I presented it as a starting point for talking about it in the contract with the township. Among some other documents that I also shared with, and it was good to meet with her, and I believe it was her, Mr. Gerard, Mr. Rattari, and Mr. Johnson. So it's a starting point. That's what we needed. This document's been floating out there since 2010, so it's a starting.
Well, I think it's a good starting point. I think it's, I don't see reinventing the wheel, and I think this is obviously legal has brought this back, I'm sure. I don't know if our legal has had a chance to look at it or not, but, okay.
And we haven't talked, thank you, Randy. We haven't talked about it.
But I think for purpose of the board for discussion, I think it's a great starting point. I myself went over it, and I don't see any real changes other than the fact that I guess my question would be, would we put in anywhere in this contract the amount of years that the millage would be in effect before it has to be re-voted on? That's my only question that I would have, and if that is it, if my feeling would be every 4 years that be come up. But other than that, this does answer, I mean, it's a pretty good contract.
Go ahead, Randy.
Just a quick question, Bruce, I mean, this was drafted in 2010. Do you know if this is still valid as far as your board is concerned? I mean, is this something that your board would be recommending to our board today, as opposed to 2010?
I would recommend portions of this to the board.
Well,
We can finish
yeah.
off the details need to be done. And this was vetted by our lawyer, so
I think that's a question that Trustee Marks was asking, is your board still in favor of this particular contract that was drafted in 2010?
well,
That-
two of our
I don't
partners
know.
were there with me, and this is
Mhm.
the direction the discussion moved in when we all sat down. And we were all there in good faith to talk about this contract, so we would be wasting our time to sit down and talk about this if this wasn't done. So if that
Okay.
answers that question.
It was the
That
consensus.
doesn't answer
of-
my question. I
Yep.
want to know whether their board approves this and is recommending it.
As a whole, as a
Has your-
board whole.
Yeah.
Has your board seen this yet?
Our
Besides
board
the
had-
two members?
There's been no recommendation made to our board yet to accept this. but,
Right.
If we need to sit down and talk more about it, that's fine. I guess it's in your court whether or not you want to pursue this avenue or not.
So before we get too carried away, I had asked Roger to do some digging, and he did that. So he may be able to shed a little light on what our next step would be, too. If you would, please.
I have never seen this before, just a couple days ago, at the end of last week, whatever day you dropped it at my office.
Right. We hadn't either. None of us that I'm
So
aware
this
of.
is not something that's been considered by this board before ever. However, by and large, much of what's in here is going to be a board decision on what you want to implement. However, there are a couple of just minor things that before it should be implemented, if this is the general direction you want to go, that could use a little bit of tweaking. It does make reference to a couple of different statutes. However, you'll recall that a couple of weeks ago that I reported to you that there are two different statutes under which a library contract can originate. One of them is MCL 397.213, one is MCL 397.214. Just so you eliminate that confusion, that was one of the problems in your old contract, is having people on different pages of what's the genesis of this. That needs to be fixed and clarified. That's a 5-minute job. That can be added, and I hand wrote it on my version here if that were the route you'd go. That's not a problem with this, but that's something that would help implement this so it would create less confusion for generations to come, or however long this thing is in effect. One minor issue that we need to take a little bit closer look at is where it discusses the state aid allocated to the township under the provisions of the State Aid to Public Libraries Act, Act 89 of the Public Acts of 1977, excuse me. That statute generally deals with cooperative libraries and public libraries, and to my knowledge, at least at this point, again, I only had this for a matter of less than 100 hours, I believe, but I don't believe Marquette Township generally gets any money under the State Aid to Libraries Act. How that does work is a public library and a cooperative library get state aid funding, and if Marquette Township or any other jurisdiction didn't have a contract, then they wouldn't get, that is, they being the cooperative library and the public library, would not get a certain allocation of state aid, as I understand it. But we don't have any state aid to assign. That would require some very minor rewording also, and maybe doesn't even need to be addressed, but that's something that's clearly important to Peter White Public Library. It's just that it's more of an issue not with us. The penal fines, you're currently, that's subject to discussion by the board. The way penal fines work, and we've talked about this somewhat in the past, is that there's an allocation of fines that are paid through district court for certain criminal actions. And they get divided up essentially among libraries that are eligible. Right now, Marquette Township assigns 100% of its penal fines to Peter White Public Library. That's legal, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. However, if there is no contract, then the township doesn't get to keep penal fines. The fines get held in escrow essentially, or get dispersed elsewhere. But if there is a library contract, those funds belong to Marquette Township. One option is to pay them to Peter White Public Library for library services. And let me jump ahead quickly before you get any incorrect ideas. They belong to Marquette Township only for library services. So you can't deposit the money in your general fund. You can't put it towards your aerial fire truck. You can't do anything other than pay library services for the public of Marquette Township. What you might be able to do, and what some libraries have done and municipalities have done over the years, is you could potentially specify that those penal fines be used for a specific purpose, such as if there are fees, if the knitting club wants to rent a room and there's normally a charge for that, and I don't know if there are charges or not. I'm just giving this as a hypothetical example. You could use those penal fines potentially to be paid to the library so that there would be certain services provided specifically for Marquette Township residents, because those are specifically Marquette Township funds. Having said that, I don't know if that's something the township board would be interested in or not. I don't even know if that's a feasible or a sensible thing. I'm just telling you from a legal standpoint, it is a permissible object that could be the subject of some discussion. You do not, what is not a permissible subject is saying, we're going to collect the penal fines and keep them. You can't do that unless you're using it for library services.
Just a point of order, I guess. What Roger is saying is exactly right, and a township to our north, let me give you an example of what happened. The township to our north had their penal fines squirreled away in the county fund under the township title, and it was for library services. And when the Peter White Public Library wanted to include that township in the library, it accepted that money that was in that county fund as a payment for, instead of the millage money going to it, they accepted that money for the first year of the contract. And that's, I think you were on the board then, but maybe not. But
I worked there.
Okay, you worked. Pardon me. And so that was another use of the township monies that were collected for library services, squirreled away in the county budgeted item until it had substantial fund there. And then they used that to make payment for the services at the library. So it's another use of it, but the township was in control of that money and used it to excuse themselves from having to pay millage. So it's a use controlled by the township for a library service.
I suspect, I'll accept that as accurate. I'm not familiar with that specific situation. I am familiar with some other situations with different libraries in different places. But that would be an example if their contract was under Section 213 rather than 214, because that's what I had indicated, is there are differing legal standards that apply to what you can do under the two of them. So I'm guessing they were under the other one. But that's an example, another example, because under Section 213 it indicates that a township or any municipality can pay for library services for all of its residents through a millage, through penal fines, through the general fund, and so forth. So those are all options. I am not suggesting that you should go one route or the other route. My job, again, is to lay the options on the table and tell you what your legal rights are, that if you do this, you're within your rights. If you step over on this line, you've crossed those bounds and you can't do that. Before I lose my train of thought, though, there are a couple of other very minor things in the contract that I would mention. In 3C, there's a specific rate of .9070 mils. I'm sure what that was the Headley rollback amount on that particular date when that contract was drafted and thrown in a drawer someplace. A preferable way, so you wouldn't have to keep changing this, would be just to say something along the lines of, if we're talking 1 mil, which has generally been what it traditionally has been, that 1 mil will, of course, be subject to the Headley rollback each year. It's only 1 mil for the first year of levy, and then it gets rolled back each year under the state constitutional amendment that was adopted umpteen years ago. But we could put that in to read something along the lines of, in an amount equal to 1 mil as reduced by the mandatory Headley amendment reduction. And we could fine tune, make it maybe a little bit more articulate than that, but that would be the gist of what it should say, rather than specifying a particular millage rate, because that particular millage rate is only going to be correct once, just like your clock is 8:45 twice a day is correct. If it stopped, that's how this would be, is it's only going to be correct once. That should be more generalized to specify that it started out as 1 mil at some point and then is gradually getting reduced each year. The next comment I had is extremely petty, perhaps, but in number 4, where it says this agreement shall be terminated by either party at the end of the library's then fiscal year, that really, I'm sure they intended it to say may, because it's talking about the options or alternatives under which the contract could be terminated. If you say it shall be terminated, you might have somebody at least that reads that and says we have to terminate the contract. And you don't. You can continue to have the contract in place, or you can decide to terminate the contract, and this tells you how to do it. So again, a very petty point, if you will, but that would be, just from a grammatical standpoint, more correct. Something else you could put in, there was some discussion by the board in terms of could we make the contract for a fixed number of years, such as 4 years or 8 years. And then we will automatically come back, then it automatically terminates and we come back and we renegotiate it. Yes, if it's under section 213, then you are allowed to do that. If it's under section 214, that's a little more nebulous on whether you can do that or not. And that's again why you should specify in your contract what it's under, so people don't have those questions in the future. And that your current contract doesn't have that, so that is the source of some of the confusion that's arisen. But yes, you can have a fixed term. Now, one other question that, since I can't talk to you individually between meetings, though I did mention this to the supervisor when we discussed this contract, is there is a difference between how often you have millage elections and how long your contract is for. The contract can be in place. You could say, for example, that it's going to be a 10-year contract and have millage every 2 years, or every 3 years, or every 5 years, whatever the board wishes. The two issues, though they're somewhat related, are entirely separate issues. To some extent, they're also apples and oranges. You have to have a contract in place in order to put the millage on the ballot. But how long the contract is for has nothing to do with how frequently you put the millage on the ballot. Your current contract is silent on how often you put the millage on the ballot, and quite frankly, things might come up that affect that the board may not wish to. And again, I'm just telling you what the options are, but the board may not wish to specify that we will have a millage election every 2 years or every 4 years, because it then limits you, and if you put it in there contractually, then you're stuck with that. Whereas if you just leave that open and you decide that, well, a millage every 2 years is an added expense that we'd rather not incur, then you can run it over to 4 years the next time. Or vice versa. If you've suddenly got a lot of people that are meeting you on the street corner and saying, you know, we're disappointed in all of the millages that are coming around, you want to have it more frequently, then maybe you leave that silent in this contract, and it gives the board a great deal of flexibility on how often you have your millage. But the contract itself should probably specify, is it going to automatically renew unless somebody provides a 6-month termination notice, or is it going to have to be renegotiated after 4 years? You should probably have something in there just so everybody looks at it now and then and is aware of what those criteria are. Again, those are very, very minor points, despite a lot of words from me on it, that could be this could be used as a fundamental basis for moving forward. If you wish to do that with some very minor revision, that could be done on very short order. I wouldn't recommend signing it as is. I think there are a couple of minor revisions, as we've just discussed, but is it a fundamental basis that could be used to move forward? Absolutely.
So that was a very excellent explanation of what I've been trying to say for a couple months, is that the contract, if I'm not getting emails or letters or newspaper articles, I'm obviously not doing a good job of explaining this, is that we have to have the contract to have services, but it's not completely tied to the millage. They're two different things. So that's why I asked Roger, he called me this afternoon, he says, what do you want me to talk about? And I said, I want you to explain the difference between the millage and the contract, because that's what we need to define. So does that make sense to you guys?
No. Well, and I thank you, Roger, for that explanation. I would rescind what I said about putting the millage in this contract, because obviously I agree. You can decide however, when we could decide to put the millage up, we can decide however long that's going to be there. So I would rescind my idea of putting anything in there, and again state that this to me is a great starting point. My only question is and I just found this, I knew I had it someplace. Right now, this year, we paid .9061 for library millage. I'm assuming that if this is what the board decided, this is where would be the starting point for this contract, and then also rolling in Headley with the point, starting at .9061, I would assume that would, I mean, rather than go back to 1 mil and then wait for the Headley to roll back down again, we would stay with what we are at now.
If you wish to place it on the ballot as a renewal millage as opposed to a new millage, then yes, it would have to be at whatever the
Correct.
At the rolled back amount, whether it's 9061 or
Right.
whatever it is, and then each year it rolls down a very small fractional amount, gets reduced each year by the Headley Amendment.
So then when I'm looking at the contract where they actually have a actual millage number in here, what would we put in that? We would just eliminate that and just,
That's what I was attempting to explain, is we could improve that by saying in an amount equal to 1 mil as reduced, or as annually reduced by the Headley Amendment, or something like that, because it did start at 1 mil,
Right.
but each year, and I'm not sure if you, or the public, really has a grasp on what the Headley Amendment is even there for. But what that was enacted to do is, in places where you have growth in your property taxes, certainly as Marquette Township does, the taxes, the revenue generated by 1 mil keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the people of the state of Michigan voted to amend the 1963 Constitution to state that money generated by the millage can't generate more than was originally enacted by, whether it's 1 mil or 2 mils or 5 mils. So that reduction is to keep the cash flow basically stable, and without putting a bite in the taxpayer's pocketbook. And by having, and by the flip side of that, of not having enhanced governmental revenues coming in at bigger and bigger amounts, to keep the two somewhat level. That's the whole idea. So that's why you have this fairly unusual arrangement under the Headley Amendment. But the wording would be 1 mil as reduced by the Headley Amendment. And again, I can come up with something fancier or more articulate than that, but that's, rather than specifying, you don't want to put in a .90.
right, so whatever's in the contract doesn't, because if we put this back up for a library renewal, it's going to be at whatever the rate was. If we had to actually make this change and say, okay, now we're going to go to 1 mil for the library, that would be it. That would not be a renewal anymore, correct? That would,
That's correct, though if you want to talk about that in more detail, we can, there are issues of when it becomes one ballot proposal versus two ballot proposals that we can get into, but
but the obvious easiest way would be just a renewal.
it would be. Now, if you were to change it, for example, so that the basis of the levy was no longer 1 mil, so that you wanted to say, we are going to, we're only going to assess 3/4 of a mil, or a 1/2 of a mil, or something like that. And I've not heard that being suggested necessarily by this board, but if you did that, then that is a new millage, and it wouldn't be a renewal, that would be a new millage, and the ballot language would be worded differently.
Okay.
So that's why I said when I sent this contract out, to pretty much ignore that 907, that's not what our committees were recommending. But I didn't touch it, we left it intact. This is the way we found it. Bruce, do you want to add anything or comment?
Is there any specific questions? I mean, do you want me to address the issue with Powell Township that it was brought up, so I mean, we find it.
Information's good, we like that.
What Mr. Mark said was accurate. There was a buildup of an escrow of funds from penal fines, and it ended up being, I wasn't director at the time, of course, so it ended up being a millage equivalent of what we would need for service from Powell Township. And that the idea at the time, as I understood it, was that it would jumpstart library service in Powell Township, and then we'd go back and ask for a millage to continue it.
Yep.
And we did that, and it failed.
And that's right, and I think that's an important point to make. Once that money that was used from the library fund that was in the county squirreled away from penal funds, once that paid off that 1 year, I think it was 1 year, and then they put it up for millage, it failed. That township didn't want to have a millage. They didn't want to have one to begin with, but they bought into this thing of using the money that was squirreled away in the county fund for library services. So that's a use of it. But I'm still mystified by, I'd like to know whether the library board of the Peter White Public Library is recommending this as something that what's on this page or these 2 pages you would accept if we did. I thought that was a condition that we sent it to. We canceled the contract and gave you plenty of time to come up with something to propose that we would consider it. You're getting a lot of tips here about how you might amend this, but it seems to me that you ought to be coming in with something through our committee to consider. Because the shoe's on the wrong foot here. We're tailoring this thing, giving some indications of what we would accept, and we haven't even taken that to a vote of this group. And you're going to take that back, and you won't have any more benefit than we do, because you don't really know what the board in total would accept. So my best advice is, this is what your board wants us to consider, or some amended version of it, then bring it back that way. Bring it back through the committee and let them bring it to us, and we'll give you a lot more tips, and we will decide what portion of it that we can accept. And if we can't accept portions of it, then it goes back again. That's how negotiations should work. It is. I just don't think taking a contract that was out of a file somewhere and having it talked about here and sent back as if we're gonna accept it is,
That's not what.
Nobody's recommending
It's
that.
not gonna
John.
happen.
John,
Lynn?
John, nobody's recommending that. It's not clear again, the intent here. In our meeting with the 8 of us, this was brought up out of a folder. There was no intent of recommendation. It's information I wanted you to have because it was in their folders. Now, Bruce, has your board seen this? Did you send it
Just
to
the
them?
members who were on
Just
that
those
committee.
two, okay. Would it be your intent to bring this to their next meeting and have them talk about it as we have?
Yes.
Okay.
And if we need to meet with our two committees to talk about changes that have been brought up by your attorney, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
If we need to keep moving forward with the negotiation, that's fine. That's how these things work. We can do it in person, we can do it back and forth, but we both have committees that we can make recommendations to our boards through. That's my anticipation for how this process ends.
Yes, I agree.
Is that we come to a conclusion that somewhere version 3.0 of this is what everybody is happy with, and we both make recommendations to our board over an agreed document, and that's settled.
So what I was kind of hoping is that at least if this board saw this document, we could have this discussion, and you would take it back to your board. You said, 2 of the members have already said the same thing. It's not like we're agreeing to anything. It's that we've kind of said, here's a document that we might be able to work from that's a little more comprehensive than the original one that was signed. It has a lot of the elements that we were kind of looking for, that I thought, as a committee member and as a board member, I thought this is kind of where we were going. So I'd like to suggest that we have our attorney type something up for us, what he thinks it should be. You do the same, take it to your board, see if they want to tweak it or whatever, and then we kind of have a meeting of the minds, bring the 2, and then if the 8 of us want to get back together again.
I don't think we're there yet.
I don't think we're there.
No.
We're not
there yet.
at a point where we should be telling our attorney to work on this, because we haven't decided what parts of it.
Well, that's what I'm asking, that's
Well-
what we're talking about here. I'm
No,
not
you're
saying
not.
doing
You're-
it,
you're
I'm not saying doing
proposing
it tonight.
something-
No, I'm not saying that we're gonna do this tonight.
Well, why are you asking our attorney to work with their attorney?
No, we're not.
No.
We're not.
I didn't. You need to kind of calm down and let me get through this.
I'm more than willing to calm down, but I want to make damn sure that your personal preference isn't going to get involved in this.
And the 7 of us are not gonna vote, I'm gonna decide. Think about it, John, just.
You're going to
No.
have one vote when it's over.
No, the 7 of us will decide this. This is not my tea party. Pete, you had your hand up.
What this really is just the first meeting they sat down, they found some information, discussed it, say, here's what we found, So now what you do is you look at it, bring it back to Arbor, we discussed it again here tonight, or we'd like to have another discussion on it, just to think of what we all heard tonight, do it again, and then move from there. But it's not something we should push through. Thank God, after 23 years, we opened a book. I'm tired of getting chastised for saying, well, you're trying to close. No, we're not. It's just what we should be doing is questioning different things in our contracts. So I'm glad it came to a vote. And I think the libraries be happy that they found it. And, let's discuss it and get it moving on. I have more questions on it, but I think at another time. But we don't keep going tonight, though. But I think it's just a thing that happened. They found, we discuss. If we go back, we talk it a couple of times, and then at the end of a couple of meetings, then you come back. You have another meeting with them. So.
Thank you. Dan, you had your hand up.
I looked at this, you gave it to us to look at, and I understand it was a document that was found, and I looked at it, and I thought it was a very good document. Am I saying this is what I want? All I'm saying is this is a starting point. We have to have some starting point. If board members have a problem or want to add to this, then they should be, come prepared to put that in here, because if we're going to keep back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and 4 months down the road, we're still sitting here trying to figure out 2 words, I think this is a great starting point. And I think this is, again, if any board members, and that's what I thought this discussion was going to be about, has something they want to add or remove or whatever, this is the time to bring it up. And move on. And then this is what we'd like to see. And then the library board would do the same thing, come back and say, okay, we look at yours and we kind of agree with it, but we'd like to add this. Then we come back to us to say, that's okay, that's acceptable. It's a consensus. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2 weeks, but it's still something that if we keep, I think we're making more of this than it is, in all honesty. I think it's just a simple contract that is there, and I don't understand. If it was sent to us. I looked at it, and I added my little thing, and thanks to Roger, I now rescinded what I added, which was good. So that's all I had. That's all I had changed in here, and except the question about the millage and where that started from. So that it's just that simple. I don't understand. If John, if you have a problem that you want to see added or removed from this, then come prepared to say it. Same with any other board member. Because if we just sit back and wait for one to bring back one, and then we're going to sit here and go through another meeting, and we're spending 45 minutes, and we're not getting anywhere. And the idea of this discussion is to move ahead with this, not put a roadblock up against it. So that's just my.
I'm not looking for any motions tonight. I wanted to.
Listen to everything. I think we have a document in front of us that no one really saw until, 2-3 weeks ago, to anything, something like this here. And we're looking at, there's some good points and bad points to it, and our attorney's addressed a number of items at this point in time from his perspective on this particular document. The Peter Light Library Board hasn't really looked at this point in time to make any comments on it at all. So I think by going back to them and giving the document to them and let them take a look at it and do with it what they want, we can continue from our point, looking at this document and say, is it going to serve the township? That we don't know. We have no idea what's going to come back from the Peter White Library. It may be very similar to this with tweaking here or there, or it may be something brand new. We don't know. But it is a document that it's a starting point in that. I don't think we're in any position to do any modifying here at this point in time, other than what Roger has said, that to look at the document that really comes from Peter White, and then we start looking at it at that point in time from our standpoint, and make whatever changes or suggestions as we go forward on that too. But it's nothing more than a piece of paper with a lot of words on that we never saw until about 3 weeks ago. So now we have to look at it from our standpoint on both sides and that. We may accept a lot of it, we may accept all of it, we may accept none of it. We don't know. And the Peter Light Library may do the same thing. They may take the whole thing as whole. They may say, no, we're going to start over, or modify it. So until we get something from Peter White that we can actually work on, and the committee can take a look at it and see what's there and come back to the board, and the board then makes some decisions as to where they want to go at that point in time. I would have to say the meeting that we had with the group from the Peter White was very, very good. Very open, very knowledgeable from both parties, and we had a lot of questions, and they were answered all the way down the line in that. And a couple of items that came up when we were talking about penal fines, we've addressed that already. The rental area, we had a nice discussion on that. It is a rental area, and they rent it out like any business rents out, and you don't really have any say on it. It's in your contract, and that's it. So you have to move forward at that point in time. And they can pretty much do what they want with it, as long as they follow certain rules and regulations and that. I brought up a couple things on the have library cards, 1,800. We know full well they can't provide a lot of information on that. And I asked if there's something they can do to give us some information that as we go along. I don't know what kind they're going to work on it, and I don't know if anything can be done. We're trying to equate the 1,800 cards to $200,000. Being a treasurer, I always want to being able to have something to hang on to, and that. And, I really can't. 1,800 cards is difficult to do, and that. But they're going to try and do something that, and they may not be able to do anything for us in the long run. But that's just the way it goes in that. we were talking about a number of things. I brought up more interaction with the actual townships themselves in that they're paying. I talked about a bookmobile, because that's going back to my son's kids down in the Appleton area and that. We talked about it a while, and it come down to one thing: money. How do you do it? And that the concept is great until you get the dollars to do it. It's something you pin on the wall and keep looking at until you come up with some dollars on that. So different things like that. So we had a very open discussion on many different subjects in that. I thought it was very well done in that. That's my feeling.
8?
Would you address the advisory role?
Yes. Excuse me, I should have.
I just, because the three of us felt like, what's a waste of time, so to take a, board member to go to a meeting and you feel like that, something should be addressed, so I hope you address that.
You want to talk about that, Bruce?
About the
The
Township
TAC.
Advisory Council?
Yeah, because we talked about that for quite a while.
We can certainly talk about that with the Township Advisory Council. The meeting is tomorrow, actually, at 5 o'clock, and it's on the agenda to discuss the involvement of the Township Advisory Council with the library and the board, and see if there's anything we can do to make commitments to increase that.
They were kind of, some of the things that we brought up, there were 2 board members there, remember, and they have a 5-member board. And they were very uninformed as to what TAC did or was supposed to do or had done. So it was a good discussion, because Ernie and I had gone to a couple of their meetings. And I think it helped explain to the president anyway, Mr. Jajic, and maybe to Bruce, where we thought they were lacking a little bit. So, and they had just gone through it, and it's still kind of going through strategic planning, so they're going to use some of that information.
As long as they sort of define the purpose of the advisory board, it's not there just to waste your time. All right, thank you.
John?
As long as we're talking about the advisory board, the people that serve there, I think, try very hard to communicate needs of the townships. And they have addressed a number of things. But the point is, even the chair of the advisory board, who is allowed to go to board meetings, when introduced at the board meeting to guests of your board, the board went out of its way to say, here is, in that case it was John Marks, here is John Marks, chair of the advisory board, but he doesn't get to vote. And that's the point that we brought up over and over again, is that the committee, the committee is appointed by the commission, and the people who are appointed to the Peter White Public Library Board by virtue of the contract that they have, or they're initiating, they must be a resident of the city. And I understand that. And I understand it more than I ever have before, because I think the library has evolved into being more of a community center than a library. It's part of my complaint about the tax dollars of this community going to support, to a large extent, community services or community service center at the library that it has evolved into. And let me speak to that for just a minute. There is understandably, but still bothersome, is the city manager has appointed hours that he holds at the library. That's the public library that we send tax dollars for. The former head of the library, the former director, when giving testimony to the commission, said, well, we're going to even do more. We're going to move more senior citizen activities to the library. The complaint that was made that in the basement of the library where the Arts Council holds its, and I understand that's a city-appointed group, but it's still the library where we pay tax dollars that support the maintenance of the library building itself. And it is annoying to see in the newspaper indications that if you want to use their services for some of the programs that they present, if you're a non-citizen of the city, you pay a non-citizen fee. It's an accelerated fee. These are all things that I think that you and your board, and maybe even the commission itself, needs to take into consideration about how you keep a warm, comfortable feeling with townships that are presenting their tax dollars to sustain that library. Some of it needs to be considered when you take it back to your board. I think it's a bigger problem than what is seen in the contract. It's a bigger problem because we need, as a board up here, I keep insisting that we need to look at what we're putting on the ballot. If we put something on the ballot, we're really endorsing it. If you put it on the ballot, you wouldn't put something bad on the ballot. So if you put it on the ballot for people to vote for, you're endorsing it. And if we're endorsing it and it's not as warm and comfortable as we'd like it to be, this relationship that we have, then something needs to be done about it. And I think it's a much bigger problem than you're going to resolve with just looking at this contract. If you just look at it and look at it in comparison to the old contract, you're not going to resolve the bigger problem that's growing. And everybody that comes before this board, the speakers that are speaking in behalf of supporting the library, I understand exactly where they're coming from. But they have to be somewhat sympathetic to the feeling about the discomfort we have about tax dollars from this community going there. And give you an example. Today, one of the things on today's agenda was an essential that we think is needed. We have some other essentials that are needed, and they're all going to be in competition with each other on ballots. So I urge you to do what you can to present the discomfort that is felt, at least by one member of this board, about tax dollars from this body going and to support basically a library / community center. And I think it can be worked out, but it needs to be considered, and it may be in the amount of the millage, it may be in deleting maybe the penal fines so that we put them into that county reservoir and just be held there until we see a way to maybe use some of that instead of our own tax dollars. There's a lot that needs to be addressed here that can be addressed, but it's bigger than a simple contract.
Okay, so,
Or
sure.
do I just sit down
No,
now?
hang on.
I'd like to ask one question. Bruce, if we're gonna have a meeting next week, we're gonna have the township personnel, we want to room at the Peter White Library. Are you gonna charge us for it?
Anyone who's a nonprofit or an individual can get one room rental a month. You as an individual, you as a board member for Marquette Township can use a room at the library.
You have, I think, 5 rooms and 3 of them you don't charge for, is that correct?
Right. the larger ones we charge for. The city manager uses one of our smaller rooms to accept people. He does so because that's where people are. He gets more traffic there. And he wants to be open to the public and have them come in to talk to him. And he does so once a month. So he has the same rights as everybody else to use that room.
Anything else you want to add, too? I mean, a lot has been said.
Well, the
so-
Arts and Culture Center, they pay 10% of the maintenance based on the square footage that they occupy in the library. And when they were put in the library as another department of the city, they pay rent to us for that space, and they pay us to maintain the space, and the citizens of Marquette pay for the building. So I don't think it's your specific tax dollars going to support the Marquette Arts and Culture Center. I think I can address that with that statement.
I might as well bring up one more. While on the advisory council, and as the chair of the advisory council, the arts group wanted more room. And they proposed to the library that the library buy an adjacent building so that they would have more room. And that was going to be a purchase by the library, and then they would rent it out again. Keep in mind what that's all about. The library is used as a vehicle to address city problems. A way to resolve them is to use the library as the vehicle to provide it. It's okay, I understand what's going on, but at least you need to understand the discomfort that township people have when they look at that.
Dan?
I'll try to wrap this up. I understand John's passion for this, and and that's fine. I really don't have a problem with that. Unfortunately, I think in listening to John on the problems that he's having, I don't know if this can be solved within 2 months. I think there's a lot more to this than is actually what the contract is, and I think the longer we keep going on this avenue, we're not going to get anywhere. As much as the people hate the fact that we terminated the contract, the best thing that happened about this thing is we're actually talking to the library. I mean, this is the first time we've actually sat down and discussed this stuff. I think this is far and above anything that we've ever worked with the library on, and I think it's a good tool for us. And I just, not that I want to accept this, but I know Roger has some problems with some of the small minor problems, and I would like to see what Roger would fix those small problems so we have another thing to start with when we decide. Because if we start changing this around and then all of a sudden we got to change, Roger's got to say, well, wait a minute, now there's 4 other things that got moved in here. Let's clean up this thing so we have a starting point again. And personally, I'd like to get moving.
Yep, we've spent enough time on this tonight. My thought,
Yes, Lynn, I wholeheartedly agree. We need to move on. We've spent the last hour and a half talking about this, and, I mean, the discussion was good, but I think we need to do what Dan said, let Roger work on this document, bring us back something that is acceptable to him, and we meet with the group, with the library group again, and then we come back and have more discussion.
if there's something that y'all would like to see in this, whether it's deleted or added, let me know. The intent of this, again, was to present a document that was a little more of an explanation of the original contract so that we could decide if it was something we wanted to consider. That was it. And I was hoping we would have some basic discussion and go to the next step. So, Bruce, do you have a thought, a recommendation, what you'd like to see happen?
Still represents our respective committees for communication purposes, so,
Okay, so we should try to get
Wanted-
together again?
yeah, reach out to me and suggest another date. And we'll
Okay,
work around it.
all right.
The
Your
next step is-
board won't meet for another 2 weeks, so you won't have any contact, well, not that you can't contact them, but, okay. So, anybody here wants to make additions or subtractions? Can we agree that this is kind of the contract we're gonna work from? That was the intent of my question tonight. Do you want a motion on it? Does it have to be that
I think
official?
it maybe a simple consensus.
That's what I asked, if we just at least had consensus.
No. If you got email, you just got to shoot them to you, you talk to Roger,
Well,
and then at the next meeting.
Whoa.
yeah, no, I would say that, I would give in favor of consensus that this is a starting point that we need to start with and move on.
Let's see what Roger has to say. He outweighs you.
Yeah.
Whoa. My comment is strictly, I can incorporate in very short order the couple of fairly minor things that I think would be improvements on what you've got here. I don't know if they will or won't address other issues you may have, but I would prefer not to see suggestions being passed along outside of an open meeting act, because I can foresee, well, especially if you hit reply to all of, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and that gets us over the line on debating or deliberating outside of an open meetings act, which I'm sure nobody, upon thinking about further, would even cross their minds. But
We know that
let's not.
reply all doesn't
yeah, let's
apply
not.
to us.
Let's not go there.
So you don't want them to do it that way?
No,
Okay.
I think I've got a general. I haven't heard anything new at this point here, and maybe at the risk of it having gone an hour and a half almost already, now's the time, I guess, if there's some major new concept that you want in there. But well, the things I was talking about are essentially minor legal and grammatical improvements to what you have. They are not fundamental changes to the document itself.
Well, I don't want to do fundamental changes tonight.
Okay?
That's not, that wasn't the intent at all here tonight. It just
The
snowballed.
question was about penal fines. Could we do something different with those?
That's going to have to be a discussion. We need to
That's what I'm
save
saying.
that. All I wanted to know was if this is what we want to use going forward. If you don't, we totally got off, and I suppose I let it go, but as a board member, I've never liked to be squelched when I'm talking, and this is important. And I wanted to give everybody a chance to say what they thought, because this is a very important document. We've put thousands of dollars already into this in legal and time and paper and staff. But it just got a little carried away tonight. Yes, Ernie?
As I said before.
I could get it done if y'all quit holding your hands up.
Well, I would like to see Peter White board take a look at this or what, and get back to us with some document.
Support.
And at the same time, this has a lot of very good points in that. I think Roger put up some. He can tweak this to a point where we may have a good direction to go, but by getting back what Peter White comes and start looking at everything and then sit down and going through everything in that too. That may be the way to go, as far as I'm concerned in that too.
Okay, so Roger, if you'll give me a document that has the changes that you'd like to see, the three of us will take it to their board with Randy the next time we put a meeting together. Okay, we'll start with that. And the six of us will come back with a recommendation. 8 of us. Okay? Can you do that?
Sure.
Just give me what you've got, and we'll work around on the details. Now, if there are board members who want some input in that document, how do you want them to do that?
At a
At our
public
next
meeting.
meeting? Okay,
Or you can call a special meeting for that matter.
Right.
You can always call a special meeting with a agenda item, but at a public meeting.
Okay. All right, we'll
Would
do that.
would it be, is it possible that if anybody does have any changes they want to make in it, they would send it to either Clerk Rattari or yourself?
Yeah, how do we get it to?
And we could, and just something that's not going to be discussed over email, but list those changes before the next meeting, because that would probably be discussed next meeting and give us an opportunity to.
It can go in the board packet.
Yeah.
And it'll be done way in advance of that.
So-
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. If
Okay.
he's got something he wants to see in that contract that he'd like the subcommittee to bring to the library, how does he do that?
No, I think what I'm saying is that obviously people have changes they want to see with this specific document that we have right now. And I'm sure at the next board meeting it's going to be discussed, those changes. Is it possible that if people do have those changes, they can either send in the Clerk Rattari or yourself, they can compile them and give them in an email, send it out to an email to each board member so they can look at these prior to that meeting and maybe solve a lot of this constant back and forth discussions of it, so you can get some idea of where this, nothing that we would work with going back and forth with that person, but just so we have a list of the changes they want to see.
But wouldn't you want that to go to the library? You'd rather have us just talk about it first?
Well, I would say because that would be the basis for the contract, so if it's a consensus of all of them, that would be fine, but if there's some that we don't agree on, then it wouldn't make any sense to give it to the board, the library board, until we agree on it.
So how does that play out, Roger? You're just going to make your changes like I asked?
Information can be disseminated, but you cannot comment or discuss,
Right,
so there should be
right.
no replies. You could, my understanding that your township manager is also on, attending these meetings at least, you could send your proposed revisions to the township manager, who could then compile a list, and he's not a board member. And then you at least have a list
And then
put
have it in the
together.
packet?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And in fact, I suppose, if you want to then send that list to me, I can at least be thinking about, well, never mind. Because until there's action on it, there's no point in me thinking about whether it goes in there or how it should be worded, but.
Yes, Randy, I'm sorry.
Just one comment. I tried to ask it earlier, but apparently it didn't come across. No, it didn't come across the way I meant it, apparently. When is the next library board meeting?
2 weeks.
Say again?
22nd.
22nd. Okay, you meet again before that. You meet on the 15th. You meet on the
Actually,
15th.
right before our second board meeting.
Move it, I'm gonna be downstate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 weeks.
I guess my point is, all of this discussion for the last hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes has been regarding a document that we still don't know whether the 2016 sitting library board agrees with from 2009-10.
That's why I
So-
said if he could take it back to
Yeah, I
his-
think it needs to go there first before anything occurs, is the library board needs to say yes or no to this document before you spend time and money with your attorney addressing it.
That's what I've been saying.
That's what I try to come across, is go to the library board and come back to us with what they have, and then we can move forward. Oh, boy.
We still have thoughts about this, so we need to decide.
In the meantime, I'd like to move to extend the meeting another 25 minutes, because we're past the 9:15.
I'll amend it till it's over, because I don't know how long it's going to be, so.
This is it. We're finished with this.
Okay. No, Jim's
Thanks,
still-
Bruce. Oh, no, I meant us. Yes, Jim. I
Jim's
didn't
up.
forget you, but Ernie reminded me anyway. Thank you.
Real brief history, 7 years ago, 2009, some of this occurred, and there was questions about the contract. And so it went back to the library board, and the library board provided this contract. I guess they were, because of recalls back and forth and so on, this contract got lost. It should have been in the files, the township files, but anyway, it got lost. But just history-wise, this transpired 7 years ago, similar situations back and forth. What ended up happening is you provided a new contract got sort of mislaid, whatever, so the township board back then signed the old contract. history. Couple brief things. Now is the time that everyone's realizing it's time to tighten belts. I'm sure the library board has figured out it's time to tighten their belts. They've been hit with the dark store issues of losing substantial amounts of their funding. They're faced with loss of Prescott Power Plant and those funds, et cetera. They're tightening their belts. I'm sure they're going to be rather careful on how they spend their money. Marquette Township also needs to tighten its belt. Comments were made about this issue of $200,000 versus 1,800 library cards in the township. That works out to about $110 per library card, which some people feel that is excessive. That's a false analysis. The reality has always been that library cards, the fees for library cards have been nominal amounts so that children can have library cards. I remember when I grew up, I had a library card, and it cost $2, something like that. Children and families can have library cards. It's always assumed that the library cards were nominal amounts and the library was really paid for by tax funds. That's a false analysis of trying to figure out this $200,000 versus what it's worth in per library card in the township. Things like, I've attended a number of events down at the library, movies, I've gone to meetings there, I've gone to variations of shows there and so on. I've never been asked who I am, where I'm from, never been asked for a fee. I'm positive there are people from Big Bay that even though Big Bay doesn't contribute any money to the library any longer, people from Big Bay still go there to use things and so on. They're there for events and so on. The only thing they cannot do is check out books. This is still a community center for all of Marquette, not just Marquette City. I think that we always have to keep that in our minds. I'm pleased that the conversations are going on. Good to have a contract, I guess, back and forth and so on, although, again, this is really still always just money that the township voters had voted upon in the past that they would like to fund towards the library. It's a pass-through. Whatever you need to do to get that to go through is my suggestion. Surprised at one comment tonight here. I think it's essential for, this is a little bit off the subject, but to plan for future essential needs like the possibility of replacement of a fire engine, things like that. I think that's great. I want to be a little brash here, I guess, but I think the township hall needs a backup generator when hell freezes over. You got to be kidding me. Anybody else? I in a business, I have backup batteries on critical computers, so if power goes out, you have the time to shut the computers down. When the lights go out, not the end of the world. There needs to be some common sense. Time to tighten belts.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, calendars. Can we schedule our CIP meeting next? I left mine home.
And we can't schedule it.
We didn't
I'll
make,
change.
Lynn, we didn't make a motion on extending the meeting. You didn't call that.
Oh,
so
you're
we-
right. I'm sorry, because Jim got up.
So I want to make a motion to extend the meeting till it's over.
Support.
Lots of support. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
You need a calendar?
No, I must have left it out on my table. I was looking for my library folder. What works for everybody next week? What have you got, Ernie?
What time are you talking, Lynn?
Well, this will be the three of us. Oh, this is CIP. Sorry.
CIP.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sinking into the table here.
I'll go along with the three of you. I'll stay home.
Do you want a Saturday? Do you
Yep.
want, Saturday would work better? What's your schedule, Di?
Saturday I got off is Monday.
Next Monday?
Yep, 'cause Tuesday I was
But you're on like 2 to 11 or 2 to 10. So you could do something in the morning, but you'd have to sleep. What's
How long are you
the,
talking about?
that's what I was just gonna say, what's the idea, an hour and a half, maybe? If we do an overview of each of the departments, that'd be an hour.
You can't do Saturdays.
2 hours probably would be best. Can't do Saturday? Okay. Randy, what's your schedule like? It's kind of iffy too.
Whatever the rest of the board decides. I don't have to, I saw Kirk's water presentation, so I
That's
don't
right,
have
at
to be
planning.
at that one.
Yeah, because we want to finish that.
Who cannot make the 12th? Let's put it this way.
Oh, that's Saturday?
Yeah. Danny, you'll be gone.
Saturday the 12th?
So if we want Dan, we have to do it before.
The day I actually have is either this Monday the 7th or when I get back, which is the 25th.
Okay, so Monday, the 7th? Mondays I try to keep
What time?
it like 10 o'clock,
Oh, during the day? Oh, anytime during the day. Set nighttime.
11 to 1? How would that work? Monday, the 7th? Pete, it's not gonna work?
I'll make it work, I just I'll be Peter. Bring it with you.
Yeah,
What times?
11 to 1? I will just adjust my schedule to accommodate that. Right here. Yep, Monday the 7th, CIP.
So
And I guess we have to ask Kirk if that's gonna work, because you'll be at work, so that should be all right, hey? Yes, to finish the rest of your project, or your presentation.
We need a motion on that?
Yes, to schedule the work session.
I move to schedule a work session on the 7th of March from 11 to 1 p.m. Subject matter by CIP.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, thank you.
We'll post that tomorrow.
Okay. New business,
Finally.
Consider memo from Superintendent Page regarding Marquette Township recycling services.
Okay, Marquette Township has been providing curbside pickup of recyclables for over 10 years. And during those 10 years, procedural improvements have been made, collection improvements have been made, citizen participation has increased, and overall customer satisfaction has increased. And then in recent years, the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority has been introducing a countywide recycling program to receive, sort, and market recyclable materials, thereby consolidating numerous individual community programs. And several communities have already signed agreements with the Solid Waste Authority and joined the county program, and most notably, the city of Marquette has signed up. We have met in the past with the Landfill Authority Director, Brad Austin, and North Country co-owner Gordy Lemire to discuss the township joining the county program. But previously, the landfill was unable to accommodate Marquette Township, and North Country Disposal wasn't quite ready yet either. So we recently met again, and now both the landfill and our contractor hauler are ready for us to come on board. So the only change for our customers will be a switch from a single stream to a dual stream recycling. Currently, we accept all kinds of recyclables every week, curbside. With the change to the county program, all the materials will basically be divided into two types, and those two types will be accepted on alternate weeks. So I've attached the information on the different types of materials, the processing required, you know, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and also the weekly schedule. So it's the same rules and the same schedule for everybody that signed up for the program. Also, I've included a recycling agreement, and Mr. Zapp has already reviewed this agreement and signed off on it. And so I'm requesting approval and execution of the agreement. And once you approve the agreement, we will immediately begin the educational outreach so that you can start this changeover as soon as possible. But prior to your discussion, we have Mr. Austin and Mr. Lemire here at the meeting, here to maybe go into some more details and answer any future questions you might have. We've been waiting here patiently for quite a while now, so
But they learned a lot, though.
I'm sure they did, maybe more than they wanted to.
Mhm.
So anyway, maybe Brad could go first and then.
Sure.
Cory.
Thank you for your patience, by the way.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, he lies.
Brad Austin, Director of Marquette County Solid Waste. We've talked a little bit over the years. It's been a while since we've been in Marquette Township. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, when the recycling program was just getting started, it was discussed initially, and then for whatever reason, it didn't come to fruition at this point as far as becoming a part of council. I think one of the things that's changed from the solid waste authority's standpoint is the relationship that we've established with several of the municipalities in the county, but also with the haulers that we're working with. What I have found over the last 12 to 14 months in this new position is that the haulers are dealing with some of the same issues we are in regards to transportation and the ability to market these materials effectively. So really made some conscious efforts to reach out to private haulers who are dealing with this material on a daily basis and coming with a plan that's more effective, which in turn has benefited the haulers, the municipalities, and the solid waste authority. So what you have before you is the agreement to basically go into the dual stream program and come out of the single stream program. Some of the issues that we've seen in the past with some of the municipalities that we've changed over recently have been placing materials out curbside incorrectly, whether it be in plastic bags or some of the other means that folks tend to put things out. We've dealt with those issues, and we've worked together with our haulers, come up with effective ways to either tag or communicate those things. And the outreach piece has been very effective. Most recently in Ishmael, where we changed over, their recycling volume has went up since they've converted over the new system. In January they had 9 tons in a month. This past month they had 12. So we're seeing an increase in volume, and there is some issues, and there has been some residents who have had trouble understanding it. But overall, in talking with Gordy and dealing with him, as we've changed these over, within a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, we've got things going right. Gordy's also informed me that Marquette Township is actually doing a lot of separation already at the curb, so he feels that the changeover will be seamless. But our staff is available to answer questions of residents so that we can work with this. So, if you have any specific questions in regards to the program or recycling in general,
Thanks for Pete.
Brad, what can they expect the first time we start this? I mean, if they get something in the wrong, then are we gonna have 2 bins? Are they gonna have 2 bins? Or are they gonna have, take what is property for that week and leave the rest in there? What can they expect?
Well, generally, it's 1 bin, and on 1 week it's fiber, and then the next week it's rigid, so they just basically alternate the bin is what they can do. Some of the things we've seen initially have been loads being tagged. We've provided the haulers with some stickers and just kind of explain it, and they check it and they say this is why. We've used that as kind of a communication tool. One of the big drivers that's helped a lot is the social media, Facebook stuff. We have our own page, and we get a lot of traffic back and forth, and that tends to address most of the issues, and we get it solved that way. So initially, those are some things that you could see. But again, generally, within a few weeks, we're doing it.
I think it's a good thing to do so, but.
So I don't know if I missed that. If somebody puts out the wrong item that's supposed to be next week, what will you guys do, especially in the beginning? Will you take it anyway, or leave it so that they?
Well, Gordon may be able to speak to Laura. We've been kind of, what Gordon and I have talked about is we're allowing some flexibility here with the changeover. But you can probably talk a little bit more about specifically what you're looking at and what you're tagging or not tagging as far as acceptable.
Yes, Gordon, at your disposal. If we come to a stop and it's, say it's fiber making there, some things there, plastics, glass, metal cans, you simply just put a sticker on it, explain what it is, several boxes to check around, they sell the curb before we launch. There's phone numbers on there to call, like us or the landfill or the township office, so that you can get the questions answered. Also in the newspaper every week, the landfill publishes what week, what's taken for the week, what are the ridges or if it's fiber week, every day it's in the paper explaining, what day it is. We can also forward that to the township office and on that website. So everybody knows exactly what week it is for exactly.
What do you think what's your learning curve? Does it take like a month to kind of get this in place, or 6 months, or 2 weeks?
A couple weeks. City issue, we just switched over first of the year. First week was by the third week, most people had on.
Gordy, can you talk more into that microphone? Or the residents aren't going to hear you.
And then how can we help to notify them too? I mean, does the mailing or something come from you, or do we want to put this on our website or Facebook, or how do we get the information
More places
out?
we can get the information out, whether, we have our website, our Facebook page, use the county's website, Facebook page, the townships, the more, just word of mouth even, the more we can get the word out, the better it is for all the residents.
Yeah, the easiest thing for our residents would be, we send out a monthly calendar to everybody on the utilities, and you can put it on the back of the calendar, or just identify each week as to what it is. I mean, that's the quickest, in addition to our website and, and our Facebook page and everything else, but that'd probably be the easiest thing for most residents. They get it every month at the first of the month, and identify the 4 weeks, the 4 or 5 weeks of the month. The other thing I think that'll be the easiest, the question came up about separating. The easiest thing is 2 bins. I mean, because you're not only going to have fibers, you're going to have fibers and ridges at the same time. So 2 bins accommodate that, and then you just alternate the bins and they go out.
And we can probably put at least some of this on the back side of that calendar, or one more sheet in, and it won't cost any more.
There's one page on here that's very succinct in terms of what you can and can't do, and that would be one that we could duplicate very easily on the website, as well as on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
All you do is fiber.
Yeah, everything you said it's going to be on our website, it's going to be on their website, it'll be on Corey's website. And the key thing is it's the same for everybody,
Mm-hmm. Ernie?
Question, when is the projected start time?
Immediately. It's going to take a couple of weeks, maybe a month max.
Because to getting the word out to the residents is, if you're going to start immediately, it's going to be a mess, because you're still going to get it, so.
Right,
you
we're
have
going to
have a
start the
couple-
outreach immediately. That's, I didn't want to do this until we approved it. So for example, the monthly billing went out today. So we did send out today, but it could be on the website tomorrow. And we can have the same ad that, the county has anyway in the paper. And it's gonna be exactly the same information on the city website, Disney website, it's all the same.
So what's your projected, like, April 1st to start? Or do you want to spend 3 weeks kind of notifying people, or what's your thought?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I don't know.
It's fine for us, yes.
I would say start with April 1st, because you're going to have enough time to get all the word out to the people everywhere you can, and you have a start date, and this is information, and that's when you go with it, because if you do it faster, it's going to be a mess out there.
Dan?
I heard the mention of bins. Are we going to use the same bins that we're using now, or are we going to get different bins? Because
They're gonna be the same.
okay, because I know that the problem with our bins is if you get a lot of papers and a lot of cardboard, we sold those stickers for $1 that if we want to put them in a regular garbage can, so they're bigger. I'm assuming that'd be the same. Okay.
Yeah, what I use is I just went and bought some heavy plastic totes, basically, and they work fine.
Yeah, the city waste management stopped supplying bins, so mine blows away. So I'm buying bins constantly in the yards or whatever.
Yeah, I don't believe that we require any specific container on anything. So, whatever people can handle, as Dan said, the cardboard and paper, the fiber is going to be the heaviest of them. The rigids aren't that heavy.
Yeah, we've
in the
always
bins,
provided
basically.
bins for free, just as a promotional. And, as I mentioned, Marquette Township has always been really supportive of recycling. So, and it's gotten better over the years through the efforts of, the hauler and the landfill.
Go ahead, Ernie.
On cardboard, a lot of times I just break up the boxes and put them all together right there. Can I still do that? Just
As long as it's beyond that.
that day? Okay.
And is it the same day you're doing them now? The day itself? Or are you changing?
Yes. Right there.
Yeah, it'll be picked up the same days as trash, it'll be the same.
So the schedule, it's by week, because every community has different days of the week that they get to.
That's why I was wondering if that was changing too. But it'd be the same?
No.
Okay. Different, right?
Yeah, the only thing that's changing is, separation to two different types. That's the only change. Same hauler. Well, another change would be it's going to landfill instead of wherever where you find it. So it's going to be way more efficient. Obviously recycling is not a big moneymaker, but with this agreement now, whatever profits are achieved, we'll get a proportionate share.
Yeah, we can very easily scan this whole packet in and put it on the web page as a link, basically, and just have it there, and then send an e-blast out to all the emails that we have, telling them it's there.
Yeah, let us know what your email address is. That's the fastest way to get information to you. We've had a lot of success
It's right
with
on your
that.
pamphlet here.
I'd so move that we, okay.
May I add one thing to it with a starting date of April 1st?
Mhm.
Fine.
Is that okay, Dan?
That's fine.
Pete?
That's fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd be in my front yard.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Looks like you got your marching orders.
All right, thank you.
Thanks again for
Do
waiting.
we have to indicate who signs? Randy?
Who's it?
Doesn't say.
Let's,
Does that matter?
If it doesn't say, then the clerk can sign, I believe.
Go for it.
Right, Roger?
Or the supervisor,
Yeah, one of us
Or-
can sign.
or both.
Okay. Consider resolution dissolving the East Solid Waste Management Authority. You've got more history on this, Randy. I don't want to have you feel left out.
me? This Randy? Oh, okay. Way back, a long time ago, long before the current Solid Waste Authority was formed, there was an east and a west landfill authority formed. The west still exists, the east does not. The east basically performed a function only to participate in the negotiations and discussions that led to the formation of the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority as it currently exists. Each of the municipalities, participating municipalities in the east, contributed some funds for the operation of it, and they never really did anything other than negotiate the rates, or negotiate the membership in the current Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority. The supervisor of West Branch Township has made a proposal and supplied to the other members of the east, including Marquette Township, a request to dissolve, under the contract, to dissolve the East Authority and to redistribute the funds on a per capita basis that are currently maintained in there. The records, we have really no records at all of our involvement in the East Solid Waste Authority. Chocolate Township does have the files that were maintained by former Supervisor Fendi that deal with it, and I think that is the only repository of documents. Chocolate Township has already adopted the resolution in support. I'm not sure about West Branch and Sands, but it is before you this evening. Roger and I have looked at it, and I don't think either one of us have any concern with regard to going forward and dissolving it. There is a provision in the agreement, the original agreement that you have in your packet, that defines how the dissolution would occur, and we're in the process of doing that by adopting resolutions.
Ernie?
I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution, but I'd like to add one thing to it, that the $1,912.21 be put into the solid waste fund.
Support.
Aye. Well,
No questions, comments?
The only reason I do it is because I'm looking for the future of the tipping fees, trying to offset maybe some of the cost to the residents.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
It's a roll
It's a roll
Oh,
call. It's a
yes,
resolution.
resolution, sorry.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Marks,
yes?
Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Trustee Truscott,
Yes.
Trustee Pompo,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
7, hey. All right, discuss Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority action to remove the county as a constituent municipality and the conflict of interest with the MCSWMA attorney. I was aware of this partly at one of the county township meetings. This came up, and the Sands Township Supervisor, Darlene Walsh, had brought some of her issues up there, and it was suggested by that body that she contact one or two attorneys at Michigan Township Association. And I believe she did, and they provided an opinion. There's a lot of reading in here for you. Roger, do you have anything to add, or I didn't know that you're not really, we haven't asked you to do any kind of opinion or anything on this.
No, you already had an opinion indirectly through the MTA from
MTA.
Rob Dahl. And his recommendation was essentially that the intergovernmental agreement be amended to more particularly specify what the county's role is going to be, but I don't know that that's not on your agenda even to, and it's not action. That would be in order tonight here.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Yeah, I don't know that there is really any action for you to take tonight. This is an issue that will be resolved by a meeting of the constituent municipalities at some point in the future. I know there is conflict. I saw indication that the Solid Waste Authority is requesting under the Freedom of Information Act documents. So I suspect that there will be some kind of an opposition or some kind of a challenge between them and I'm not sure who, whether it's the constituent municipalities or the county or whoever. It's not clear at this point who the combatants would be in that battle. What is being requested, though, by Darlene Walsh is that the constituent municipalities request the convening of a meeting of the authority so they can have input and to put the measure to a vote.
Well, there is a meeting, I was trying to find out when it is, April something.
April
Is
20th,
there
the annual meeting.
20th, okay.
Yeah, and that's what they were targeting, is that annual meeting.
I think that's when we have to go and make any comments at that point.
Mhm.
So do we need to, what's the discussion part of it then? How do we need to factor into that?
Well, I think the discussion part of it would be to determine if the board en masse, or if you're going to have representatives of the board attend that meeting and vote.
Well, we'd need to have some kind of a platform as to how we feel about the conflict, or,
And I think that's why the opinion was requested of Rob Thal and has been distributed by Ms. Walsh to the other constituent municipalities for the basis for the discussion.
Ernie?
I would suggest that each one of the board members go through here and look at it, and do you agree with what's being presented here? And if you do, we'll move forward board level when we go to the meeting and say this is the direction we want to go, so.
So you want to put it on the next agenda?
On the
after-
next agenda, and each board member go through and read it, and do they agree with it, or do they not agree with it?
And I guess at your next meeting, then, the board should probably take a position through a motion giving direction.
Either to do a letter, or one of us goes, or,
To take a position one way or the other, either to amend what they did or to support what they did.
Pete?
Then that meeting is April 20th at 4 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock to be taken up to stockholders thing, so at 4 o'clock on the 20th.
Where is it?
At the Nagani Township Hall.
That's what I thought. They said at the county meeting that it was in April, but they didn't know when.
Well, they might change it because if they're gonna be a big one, but,
It's their annual meeting.
okay, because they can probably go into the gym if they had to.
All right, so we'll put that back on the next agenda, on the 15th.
I'm presuming you're going to want that as an action item on the next agenda, not unfinished business.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, consider polling facility use agreement. That's all to you, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, I did check on my records and found out our polling use agreement for St. Christopher's had expired at the end of 2015, so had Roger draft a new agreement with St. Christopher's Parish for 4 years. I did talk to them. Sister Colleen was fine with it. She did sign it, so I just have to have the board's approval to execute the contract. So we'll have that facility for the next 4 years.
So moved.
Okay.
The motion is going to indicate who's signing it, too.
Yep,
Both of us.
clerk and supervisor will sign. So John made the motion, and who seconded, Pete?
Whatever.
Okay. All right.
All in favor?
Next item.
Aye.
Next item.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Consider changing May 3rd board meeting date. Lost about my calendar.
Again, background, we do have a school election now that day, which I didn't know when we did make the original meeting schedule, so I would assume the board would like to change their meeting to the next day, which would be Wednesday.
That's the 4th then?
Correct.
You making that motion, Randy?
I'll make that motion. We change the board meeting to May 4th.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Managers report.
In addition to what's in the written report, I really don't have any further comments on the written report, but two items that I do want to pass along to the board and to the residents. Even though our ice skating season is pretty much over, the warming facility is open daily. We do have residents that are still using the kiddie park climbing structure, have been using it all winter long, so we will be leaving the warming facility open its normal hours, 8:30 in the morning until 10 in the evening when the lights go off, so that will be available for use and for warming. Also, the other thing, more importantly, is we have, if you didn't see it in the newspaper, we have had 2 discoveries of emerald ash borer in Marquette Township. One is up at the Eagle's Nest area. Have you seen the purple traps that they put out hanging in the trees, the triangular traps? The one up at Eagle's Nest did produce adult emerald ash borer, and so did the one on the north end of Huron Street, near the where Meister's sells Christmas trees, right in that area. They were also captured an adult emerald ash borer, so they are in Marquette Township. If you're a resident that does have ash trees on your property, you may want to get in touch with County Conservation to see what avenues you might have in terms of stemming the expansion or in addressing your trees to save them. Other than that, any questions board members may have?
Anything from anybody? Nope, okay. Public comment, again. I'd like to, absolutely.
Tom Bronken, 235 Forest Hills Drive. And I will be very brief. I wanted to talk 2 points. The first one was, there was discussion tonight about the discomfort of the residents about the direction the library is going, being more of a community center. I don't think that is the majority of the residents, at least the ones that vote on villages, feeling. I think that we are warm and comfortable with the way the library is right now, so I think we can. My second point is I'm really glad you're talking. It sounds like you're making progress, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, and thanks for waiting, Tom. Anybody else? Jim? No? Additional comments from board members? Yes, Mr. John.
Just briefly, it was mentioned about the need that, and I expect we'll be discussing it at our session, capital improvements. Through the years, the budget session has frequently brought up the need and the expectation that we would add a generator to this facility. The generator addition obviously would provide backup in general, but the primary reason that it was talked about was that our community center facility would be able, with the aid of a generator, would be able to provide a place of refuge for residents who were without electricity. And that's what the primary thought was behind when this building was, this facility was put together. We provided for the attachment of a generator. So I think it needs to be made note of that it was to provide a better facility to house residents as a rescue area more than anything else. So I understand your comment, the comment that was made about having a generator as a backup for facilities. It is needed for the clerk and other people so that we can conduct business. But the primary reason it was added was for a facility to house residents who would have no electricity.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Randy.
Well, not to extend the meeting any further, but I know Mr. Shelby was in opposition to that generator, but I can tell you firsthand, I was here when the power was out 4 hours and we couldn't do anything. There's no business here conducted. We probably lost several $1,000s in business for that day because we couldn't do it. I know the city of Marquette had that happen one time, and they lost several $1,000s on a day because they couldn't get anything done. We had to send our staff home because they couldn't do nothing here. I know power backups can handle it for 10 minutes or so, but beyond that, we can't do anything. And if I'm in the middle of an election and I have a power outage, what am I going to do? I can't just put the ballots in the machine with no power. So I got to have something, and that's why I was a proponent of the generator in this facility. If the church don't have power, emergency, I can send them over here. We can vote here if I have to. That's why I need it.
So what do we do, Randy, with the employees? Do we pay them too then, even though they're gone? How does that work?
We have a, let me put that back on. We have a blanket policy that in that type of a situation, we pre-approve vacation or personal leave. It's not just like a free day. You know, we do have the backup, but without our heating plant is the biggest issue during the wintertime. It gets cold in here pretty quickly. So
Pipes freezing, and who knows how. That's the second part of the question was how long do you wait before you send them home? Do you have like, okay, if the power's out an hour or 2 hours or?
That's a determination that I make, and when I check with local law enforcement and I check with weather service to see what the predictions are. And, you know, and really when the weather's really bad, people want to go home, and that's the worst possible time for you to leave and go out is when the weather's really bad. So we keep them here as much as we can, basically to keep the facility operating. And, you know, when we're talking about generator, we're not talking about a huge thing truck mounted. We're talking about one just big enough to operate, as Trustee Marks said, those portions of the building that would be used as kind of, I don't like the word evacuation center, but a housing center, if in fact we have a situation where we have pipes frozen or we have power outages or whatever, we have someplace for the residents to be able to come and operate. We have the kitchen facility, we have the restroom facilities, and, you know, and we, when we had the freeze up 2 years ago, when we had the freeze up, we were calling hotels to see if we could have residents go to the hotels to use facilities and take showers, you know. So, I mean, those are some of the things that we have to kind of deal with, that we would be able to provide some of that relief here.
Anybody else have anything? Pete?
I'd like to thank Tom for your remark. For the last couple of months, we can beat up on this library thing, and we knew we were doing the right thing. And, you know, we should never ever let this go beyond and hope it's in the contract 23 years before you look at it again. So, thank you. Hope the manager repeats that 400 sometimes, how many times we got beat up on. I
Yeah.
just think it was the right thing to do, and we know it wasn't popular, but we had to talk about it because, you know, it's our obligation to look at all contracts and that. And I think a good positive thing's going to come out of it, so thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that, Pete. I'm glad you said that, because just the fact, like we said, that we've gotten to talk to the library, that's important. It's too easy to forget that kind of stuff. This has really been hard on everybody. It's not
They're doing
easy
great
to
things up there.
sit here and make people mad and have them write editorials that are not correct and send emails that are not correct. That wasn't our intent. We just wanted to look at the contract. The millage is a whole nother issue, and we kept trying to separate that. And I don't know if people don't hear or we're not explaining things well enough. Maybe we'll take the blame. But I think it's working. The system is working, and that's what we're supposed to do here. So we get paid the big bucks to do.
Yeah. All right.
So, one more motion?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Yeah.